Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Cabbage Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Was Adopted by Nezu? Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Nezu watches the timid green-haired boy who was sitting settled in the corner. The room had a layer of dirt on the wooden floor with half-dead furniture scattered around the room. All the other kids, ages varying between 4 and 14, were huddled together for warmth. The room had an air of sadness and regret. The child seemed like he wanted to say something but couldn't. The rat approached him slowly, so as not to alarm him, before setting down. Greetings. I am Principal Nezu of U.A Academy. I'm here on a visit to local orphanages. Those green eyes stared at him before beginning to blabber, quietly. Like he was afraid to be hit. You have high specs, which enhances your intellectual abilities so you can live dash. The boy cut himself off with a quick smack to his mouth, ducking his head and wrapping his arms around himself. He smiled in response, probably out of politeness. No one smiles at Izuku, and nodded slowly. That's correct. What else do you know of me? Do not worry about offending me. I am a rat. I have been called many insults. You run U.A, the school that has the highest success rates for aspiring heroes. You don't specialize in support, but there are a few that have made it big from your courses. And you have a reputation of being terrifying. I think that might be biased though. Most people don't like what they don't understand. The timid boy slowly began loosening up, unwrapping his arms from around himself and fiddling with his hands, brushing his fingers together, recalling his knowledge from years of articles and his own experiences. You don't hate humanity from what I can tell, but you don't love it either. It harmed you and broke you and left you behind and you had to build yourself up by yourself? Not too dissimilar from you. Nezu finally spoke up. Though, I am surprised you know all this, considering you're not even a teenager. The boy curled back up quickly at that, hiding his face. 34 days as an orphan. I think I'm fitting in, but will probably die before we can age out. No one else here seems to have made it past their 16th. I can't have that happen to the human who may be able to take over the world with me. Nezu declared loudly. He asked Izuku his name before standing and storming his small frame to the counter. I want to adopt Midoriya Izuku. Izuku Midoriya, Izawa legally, couldn't move, staring at the gates of his new home, attached to U.A for convenience. He swallowed a particularly large lump, possibly the size of an apple from how it choked him, as Nezu pulled him gently forward. No need to be afraid. My home is not very big, but it's definitely big enough for 2 rats. Well, you are my rat pup now, Izuku. That was true, wasn't it? His mother really had gone and now, well, maybe he should thank her tonight. He would definitely cry again. The hall was lined with artistic paintings in varying styles and the floor was plush from the carpet. Every wall was painted gray or red. A few tables with pots of flowers and books were scattered around both floors, though there were definitely more on the ground floor. I'll prepare dinner, you can get settled into your room. You may take a shower or bath and I'll call when it's ready. You don't have any allergies, do you? And no, not that I know of. Izuku muttered, looking around the room. It felt too big for him, too luxurious. And the walls were bare, nothing like home where he'd had posters covering every inch of the paint job they'd done together. His new room was awfully plain, just a bed and side table, both with black wood. The bedsheets were a soft baby blue to match the white walls. Baby blue curtains hung from above the windows, held to the side with rope to let light into the empty room. There were no paintings, no posters, no desk or bookshelf. Izuku sighed and set down his bag on the bed, heading straight for the shower. A week's worth of grime wasn't very comfortable, especially with the untreated burn marks and cuts littering his skin. He shuddered slightly as the hot water hit his back, grabbing some soap and shampoo before he was left alone with his thoughts. He was quick to dress himself once done, before setting his bag down on the floor and sitting on the bed. He didn't unpack, not yet. It'd make it real. The meal was quiet, apart from the occasional slurping sound of noodles, and Nezu hoped he didn't see anything when Izuku pulled his sleeves down to cover his arms, but he knew he had. Izuku, I've made a doctor's appointment for you tomorrow. I do hope that's okay. Nezu chose to timetable a conversation about his previous school life later. I shall be tutoring you. A great mind needs another to grow. Izuku shot his head up, staring at Nezu. You shouldn't do that. I'm sure you have more important things to do. And you'd be bored all the time. I think it'll be just fine, little rat. Nezu held up the teapot. Dear Mum, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you, that I couldn't save you. It was my own fault. If I hadn't ran after All Might, if I had been stronger, if I'd been born with a quirk, maybe you would still be here. It's selfish. You don't deserve to come back just to look after a worthless Deku like me, but you saved me so many times. I want you to come back and tell me everything's okay, everything will be fine, that I'm not alone. I met Principal Nezu and he seems nice, but I can't help but feel it's all a trick. Like he's going to throw me aside and leave me alone in a ditch. Just like Kaken did. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I lied to you. I'm sorry. Izuku finally fell asleep, tears rolling down his cheeks and hands over his mouth. All his dreams were nightmares. Izuku never liked doctors. Or he did, before he turned 4 and they took his entire life away. He flinched as they took some blood for testing and shook as they assessed his injuries, staring at the skeleton poster on the wall. They always cut off the picture before the feet, to avoid discrimination. He tried to distract himself with facts, muttering away. About 250 to 275 bones for my age. Bones can support a ton on their own. There are 3 types of circulatory systems. Babies are born with around 300 bones. Nezu would say he was surprised, but he wasn't. He'd chosen Izuku for a reason after all. He has a few minor burns and cuts. I'll prescribe some cream for the burns, but the cuts can be dealt with any normal antiseptic cream and plaster. Nezu nodded, keeping his calm exterior as his worried interior dissipated. That's good. We shall be taking our leave then. He was sipping tea. When did he get a teacup? Have a nice day, doctor. The rat and the pup left together, staying close as they head home. Were those from the fire? Izuku tensed and pressed his lips together, looking out the window of the car as he nodded slightly. A month and the orphanage didn't get you medical help? Didn't want to waste it on a quirkless Deku? He muttered as reply, curling in on himself a bit. Nezu didn't like it. How dare someone not treat the injured just because they were born with an extra toe joint? He was going to sue and then demonize them socially. What would you like for dinner? We don't have much else to do today, so I prepared some tests for you, so I know your intelligence level. And after working hard, you'll surely be hungry. Izuku got to pick dinner? He hadn't picked dinner since. Katsudon would be nice, but you don't have to. Katsudon it is. Nezu, Eraser expelled all his students again. Hisashi, present Mike, burst in, a hand on his head and mid-sigh. As much as he loved his husband, he could be an ass sometimes. No potential. Eraserhead simply shrugged. He was logical, and letting students believe in themselves only to be told after years of hard work that they didn't have what it took? Illogical. I cannot do anything about that, Mike. You know this. Besides, he'll be able to help me now. Nezu gestured to a deeply concerned Izuku, staring at the 2 pros and visibly shaking. Did you kidnap a kid, Nezu? Aizawa couldn't help but ask. Of course not. I adopted him legally. Although, I did have to use your name for that, as I don't have one. This is Izuku, he's very smart, if his test results are anything to go by. Especially in the analytical field. The Aizawas both blinked slowly for a minute before Mike slowly side-waddled out as Eraser slammed his hands on the table. There cannot be 2 Nezus. The world barely survives with just one. Eraserhead. Don't spoil my fun. Nezu set down his teacup and moved over to Izuku. Also, you're scaring him. Aizawa hadn't even considered how the kid felt, being torn from his home to live with this mad rat. He moved his hands off the table and rubbed his temples. I apologize. But Nezu, you cannot raise a child. Then you raise him. He already has your last name. And he hasn't properly moved in yet. We can't just adopt. We're 2 pros who both work multiple jobs. Then he stays with me. But you're more than welcome to babysit when I'm busy or if you want to reconsider. Now, if you'll excuse us, we're mid-dinner. Aizawa groaned quietly, running a hand through his hair as his eye bags seemed to grow darker. I'm taking all your leftovers, he declared as he walked out the room, closing the door behind him. Was that really? Izuku couldn't tear his eyes away from the door. Yes, those were the Aizawas, Shota and Hisashi. Otherwise known as Eraserhead and Present Mic. Their quirks are so cool. And Present Mic has some of the best support gear. The mic in his headset lets him control his voice without harming himself. And Eraserhead can erase quirks. That's what makes him so good at underground work, and Izuku covered his mouth and sat from where he'd stood in excitement. Sorry, habit? I don't mind at all, little rat. If anything, I find it intriguing. Perhaps we can get you some video or live footage of them both, and you can help them improve. You do have a knack for analyzation after all. Really? I do not lie unless it's for my own amusement. Reassuring. Izuku went through his morning routine, trying to stay awake for the day. He hadn't gotten much sleep that night, the fire unsettling him deeply. He slapped his face a couple times before finally heading downstairs, stretching his arms above his head. Morning. How was your rest? It was fine. Izuku let out a loud yawn. Izuku. Nezu looked at the boy with seriousness. If you cannot sleep, you're more than welcome to join me. I often read till I fall asleep, and I'm told I have a rather comforting fuzz when touched. Izuku was tempted to laugh, wondering if it was a joke. And it'd be offensive not to laugh at a joke. But Nezu seemed serious, and he'd looked right in Izuku's eyes the whole time, despite how uncomfortable it made Izuku. Okay, maybe. Nezu nodded and resumed reading the newspaper, sighing quietly at something he read. Eat up, we need to go shopping. Izuku was in a normal white tee with red sleeves and blue jeans. And, finally, a blazer that Nezu insisted he wore. Apparently adding one made it seem you weren't wasting any time, that you were important, even if Izuku wasn't actually important. He was wondering if they were even allowed to shop in public when Nezu asked him to reach the turmeric on a higher shelf. He placed it in the cart and shook his head slightly. That's why he came. He was taller than Nezu. How much are we getting? A bit here and there. Maybe more. Who knows what adventures await in the world of a shopping mall. And some shoes, you need them? Izuku looked down at the worn red shoes that seemed to be missing half a top, exposing his sock toes. Yeah, that makes sense. Nezu smiled and continued their walk around the store. They did need food, but he also wanted to know what it was like to shop with his son. He'd never shopped with anyone. Izuku couldn't help but notice the lack of people in the aisles they went to, especially since it was a Sunday and people wanted to shop for the next week. The only people they did see were a few staring fans or workers restocking shelves. Nezu, why aren't there any people here? I threatened to lower their overall popularity so no one shops here if they let too many people in while I'm here. Yeah, that sounded like Nezu. He didn't really have any other questions, so they just went around picking out ingredients for new recipes they could try and new tea flavors. Izuku was especially excited to try the salted caramel one. You can get the shoes while I grab some other things, yes? We can meet back in front of this store. Nezu handed over way too much money for just shoes as he wandered off with the cart. Shoes. Yeah, I can get shoes. The shoe store was about as busy as usual. No one really needed any for another school year, so it wasn't busy enough that it'd make Izuku have an anxiety confrontation. He went to the single shelf of quirkless shoes and scanned over them. He didn't see his size. He had to talk to a clerk. Izuku awkwardly stumbled to a bored clerk and took a deep breath. ML looking for these INS size 4. He held out the shoes he'd taken off the shelf. They were the same brand and color as his broken ones. Size 4. Let me check. They droned out, walking behind an authorized personnel-only door. When they re-emerged, they had some shoes in a box, a clear 4 on the side to show the size. These do. Why yeah, thank you. Izuku managed out, taking the box and putting the borrowed shoes back on the shelf before heading to the counter to pay. These shoes were like telling the world he was less than and he'd never be comfortable announcing that. But Nezu gave him a task and he was not going to disappoint. Izuku's smile rivaled the sun as he made his way back to the storefront he and Nezu agreed to meet at, holding the shoe box close. Nezu was already there, sitting in the cart as he waited. The boy chuckled slightly at the sight as he set down the shoes in the cart. I got them. Nezu clapped slightly before standing up inside the cart and petting Izuku. Well done. You passed your first trial. Trial? There was the anxiety coming back to gnaw at him. Yes. And your next is to accept this. The rat held out a small, rectangular box with the words Huawei on it. That was a phone brand. Had Nezu gotten him a new phone? This isn't a trick, right? There's no bomb in there or electric taser. His anxiety began wandering through the worst possible scenarios. No trick. But accepting it means you accept you deserve it? Do I deserve it? Izuku muttered, staring at the box. He didn't really feel like it. He'd been nothing but a burden his whole life. No burden needs a phone so they can bother people more. Of course. You have improved 2 heroes, increased my daily enjoyment and bought your own shoes. Quite the feat for someone with anxiety. Izuku slowly reached out his hand and took the box with a worried expression. He had done all that, but anyone could do it. It was definitely... He might as well get it over with and die now instead of disabling Nezu's home. He carefully opened the box. No bomb, no taser. Just a normal phone. That meant Nezu wasn't lying. He actually thought Izuku had earned it somehow. He stuttered out a thanks as he placed the phone back in the box and closed his eyes. I've already added mine and the Aizawa's multiple numbers for convenience. It also means you can now text me whenever I leave, if you get worried. Izuku had 3 pro heroes' phone numbers, a phone and new shoes. And he'd only been there 2 weeks. Not just anyone can manage that. Maybe he was special. Izuku had settled in nicely to his new routine over the past week. Breakfast, work with Nezu, lunch, chess with Nezu or one of the Aizawas coming over to babysit. He didn't think he needed to be babysat. He was 11. But the others disagreed and he couldn't really say no to pro heroes. Sometimes he got to help Mike with his podcast too, so it wasn't all that bad. He'd just finished his lunch, washing the dishes to feel some form of useful, when he heard the doorbell and then someone enter. Little rat? Coming. Nezu sat with the guest in the living room. It had been set up for chess, with a hot pot of tea to the side and 2 perfectly placed teacups. Izuku walked in. He froze at the sight of, was that hound dog? U.A's school counselor. You and Nezu, why is he here? I've been noticing some concerning behavior patterns and asked Inui to pay a visit. I won't be in the room for this and I've had Inui sign a non-disclosure agreement, for your comfort and safety. Oh. Izuku felt his guts sink to the floor. He'd been worrying Nezu, he was such a crybaby, of course he noticed. Nezu put his hand on Izuku's arm and smiled reassuringly. Maybe you can teach Inui to play chess? Izuku slowly waddled over to his seat and poured himself some tea. Sorry about this. I'm a counselor, don't worry about it. I won't force you to tell me anything but I'll gladly listen if you do speak. Okay. Izuku turned his attention to the chessboard, scanning over the pieces. I think we damaged the board by playing too much. He muttered, brushing a hand over a worn-out white square. Nezu does enjoy chess, though I don't understand it. It's a strategy game. The objective is to defeat the king or take him captive. Though, most games call checkmate before they do defeat. Not at all like real life. Inui raised an eyebrow at that. I understand you move the pawns like this, right? He moves a pawn forward 1 space. Yeah. But pawns can move like this. Izuku moved a pawn forward 2 spaces. In the first round. Like an adrenaline rush before they realize what's happening. Some tactics involve moving them 1 spot first though. But surely you need to get the king as soon as possible. Well, setting up borders is common. Though sometimes people want to lure others into thinking they're unsure of their next move. A false sense of confidence can be deadly. I see. The dog man was focusing less on the game and more on the way Izuku explained it. With a lot of conflict and sadness so far. What do these do? Bishops move diagonally, knights move like this. He moved the piece forward 2 and side 1, staring in concentration. They can bypass but the other pieces can't. Castles move horizontally and vertically. The queen can move any direction she wants. And the king can move 1 space. Got it. Why can the knight pass over but others can't? The knight would do anything to protect their king. They'd defeat their own queen if they had to. Mindless followers. They'd all die for their king really. You seem to think of chess very morbidly. I guess. Could there be any reason for that? Izuku stopped briefly from where he was moving a piece. There wasn't really a reason, right? It was just, about him. He shook his head and placed the knight. No, probably not. Your pause indicates otherwise. But I won't push. Sorry. Izuku felt something wet drop onto his hand. There were inside though, was there a leak? No, he was crying again. Izuku! Inui moved over to the boy, wrapping an arm around him and pulling him into his fur. Sorry, I'm such a crybaby. Izuku hiccuped and buried his face, clinging tightly. A therapy dog was perfect right now. There's nothing wrong with that. Kaken hated it, the teachers hated it. Everyone hates it. I scared Nezu cause I'm such a weak crybaby. He couldn't help but cry even more, barely able to even make sounds now. Hound Dog decided it'd be best to stop there for now. You can cry as long as you'd like, Izuku, I don't mind. In fact, it makes you so strong to be able to cry in front of someone else at all. Izuku awoke, hair in his face and blanket half off the bed. Another nightmare, of course. He pushed the green locks away, trying to glare at them as he made his way to the bathroom. He'd recently found out that mint wasn't supposed to make you zone out every time you taste it, so Nezu had gotten him fruit-flavored toothpaste instead, and brushing his teeth didn't seem so daunting anymore. He splashed his face with water before glaring at his hair once again. You are getting brushed. He grabbed the conditioning spray before gently brushing it, sectioning parts to make it easier for him. Once done, he moved back to the bedroom, picking up the bag he'd still not unpacked to get dressed. Just a simple green hoodie and black pants. Then he made his way through the house to the table, sitting in his usual seat. He lurched forward as he heard a farting noise. A whoopee cushion, of course. For all his genius, Nezu loved simple pranks. He just sighed and set it on the table for when the rat came in to get it himself. The smell of tea and cooked meat filtered through his nose as he looked over the food for breakfast before digging in. Nezu was an amazing cook and he proved it every day. Usually 3 times, sometimes more. Good morning, little rat. Nezu walked in and picked up his prank toy, sitting at the table and chuckling to himself. Good morning. Thanks for breakfast. Izuku's smile was small, but it was there and it was real. Of course. Nezu poured them both the tea and sipped from his cup. Present Mike ended up slipping about you helping him improve, so the other teachers have requested some help as well. We're going to start on that for this morning's lessons. Izuku tried to hide his disappointment at the mention of lessons, though he couldn't blame Nezu. He hadn't told anyone why he shouldn't. Sounds good. I still have my notebook from last time too, so I can grab that once I'm done. As soon as he saw the video of Cementos, mid-battle, his mind and hands started racing. His writing was sloppy, unable to keep up with the sheer speed of his own brain. He didn't blink, not wanting to miss a single second, until the video was over. But, well, are you sure it's okay for me to criticize them? I don't want the entirety of you coming to defeat me. Certain. Now, what do you think? Nezu took another sip of tea, legs folded neatly over one another from the armchair where he sat. Honestly, it's not being used to its full potential. I mean, manipulating cement to save people is very good. But he could try to manipulate bricks too. They are made from similar things and it'd speed recovery missions. He could also use it to create spikes or some kind of offensive weapon on the ground to hold back and injure the villains. He should train in close combat too, just in case. Nezu nodded along, smiling. Good work, little rat. Izuku felt his heart swell with pride as he grabbed some spare paper, beginning to make sense of his own notes and make it formatable so others could actually understand it and improve from it. Nezu moved to change the video to the next hero, humming quietly to himself. His protege was perfect. They continued like this, analyzing, explaining, writing. Every time he thought of a new way for someone to improve, he felt useful. He was actually helping people for once instead of harming them. When lunch came, Izuku was exhausted, having run his brain dry, and just wanted a nap. Nezu insisted he eat first and he couldn't disappoint him after managing to make him proud, so he ate, then made his way up to the room and flopped on his bed, sinking into the sheets and drifting off. Hurry. He might wake up soon. Nezu grinned as the Aizawas walked in, followed by a few friends. Does anyone want to help me in the kitchen? Izuku finally woke after 3 hours, rubbing his eyes and stretching as his body began to reboot. He finally registered that he was no longer in the land of dreams and checked the time. I was asleep for 2 hours? He hadn't slept that long for a month, so he decided to count it as a win and make his way downstairs. Finally awake, little rat? Aizawa is a horrible person to play chess with. Aizawa smacked his head against the table as he lost. I swear he's cheating. Sorry I was asleep for so long. Izuku sat beside him and looked at the board. He didn't cheat, sorry. I know. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Aizawa pouted as he moved out the way for Izuku to play, moving to sit on the floor. He said it was more comfortable. No one believed him. The 2 players reset the board. Nezu played the first piece and set the timer. They each played a piece at a time, staring at the board with concentration clear on both their faces. Izuku was panicking a bit. Everywhere he looked he saw no exit. Now it was Nezu's turn to panic as he tried to find a way out of the predicament he'd gotten himself in. Aizawa was lost at this point, unable to keep up with the 2 geniuses in the room. Checkmate. Izuku smiled innocently at Nezu as he won the game, letting himself slouch and sweating a bit. That makes it 54:59. He added a tally to a nearby notebook. I'm catching up, Nezu, you're gonna have to try harder. I was close, but well done, little rat. You did well. Our games are always so interesting. Nezu looked up at the clock in the room, tilting his head. It's already 3:30. What's time truly anyway? Izuku sat back down and nodded. Agreed. He heard snoring and finally noticed that Shoto had passed out on the floor. Maybe it was comfortable. We should move him to a bed, right? Are you strong enough to lift that? No, I am not. Izuku scratched the back of his neck with a nervous smile. Have we really played over 100 games in a month? I believe so. Nezu clapped his hands together, standing. Then his smile dropped as he sighed. I have to get ready for a meeting. I apologize to leave you on such short notice, but such is the life of a principal. Don't worry about it. Izuku always felt bad whenever Nezu left. Like his gut was going to drop out to the floor as a rock. He had nagging feelings of terror, thoughts that he didn't want to think about. Having someone over helped, but it didn't erase. Who won? Aizawa said, voice laced with sleep and face down on the floor. I won. Izuku took out the cups and pot to the kitchen sink. The tea was cold, almost freezing after an hour of not being touched at all. Maybe he should get his savings and buy Nezu a teapot glove as thanks. He nodded to himself as he made another pot of tea, just the way Nezu taught him. He poured himself a cup and leant against the counter as he drank from it, lost in thought about positive things now. Gifts for Nezu. Izuku hadn't heard when Nezu left, but that was normal. Nezu had stealth to rival Eraserheads. He sighed and pushed himself away from the kitchen, sitting in the living room and staring into his cup. Who thought putting dead leaves in hot water was a good idea? I mean it is, but that's still weird. He muttered to himself. Aizawa woke around 3:49, grumbling to himself about nonsensical dreams and flopping onto Izuku's lap. Sometimes Izuku wondered who the actual kid was. Do you want to play with me? You'll win. Aizawa pouted. I'll go easy on you. You'll still win. Izuku giggled to himself, nodding slightly. Sorry about Hisashi telling the others. He doesn't know when to stop talking. I didn't mind. It was kind of fun. And I'm actually helping someone instead of solving random questions on history, literature, or maths. Izuku smiled. I have the original notes with yours. Nezu's giving them a copy tomorrow. His smile dropped as he began to think of all the ways it could go wrong. Aizawa put his hand on Izuku's face, snapping the boy out of his thoughts. Let me see. Okay. Izuku waited for Aizawa to sit up instead of laying on him before grabbing the notebook and papers he'd used. He chewed his lip, nervous that the older would despise his analysis or just leave, disappointed. Instead, he smiled and nodded. Yeah. I work with these guys and I didn't think of half this stuff. Good job, problem child. Izuku store with wide, beady eyes. Thanks. He finally managed out after a full minute of processing. Shota groaned as his phone rang, walking out to the hall to take it. Hey, problem child. Can we go upstairs? I want to play a prank on Nezu. Izuku shook his head as he stood and walked over. Bad idea, but if you're absolutely certain then sure. He led the way, letting his feet guide him as he walked the familiar halls. He stopped when he saw his bedroom door was open. Odd, he thought he'd closed it. He peeked his head around, cautious as ever, only to be met with the smiling faces of all the teachers in the school, including Nezu. The walls were now green with pictures and paintings and posters of a ton of heroes. The bed now had forest-themed sheets on them that seemed to swallow the bed whole. Even the lamp had been replaced with one that could reflect stars onto the walls. As he took a step in, he saw a desk and a bookcase. The desk had a wrapped box on it. The person who'd wrapped it had clearly struggled as it was mostly tape. The bookshelf was lined wall to floor with blank notebooks and workbooks. Happy birthday, little rat? Nezu finally spoke up once Izuku had his safety device to cry, stepping forward and wrapping him in a hug. Izuku clung like he was a lifeline. This made it official. They wouldn't put so much effort into the room if they were going to make him leave. They cared. Thank you. Shota joined his husband. Come open presents, problem child. I want cake. Izuku chuckled, voice wet from his tears as he nodded and walked over to the pile of presents beside the bed. You didn't have to do this. You know I enjoy spoiling you, little rat. And the teachers are more than happy to get on your good side before we take over the world. The teachers all nodded. Izuku giggled quietly as he sat on the bed, opening the first one. By the time he'd opened them all, everyone had had a drink and some snacks, prepared by Nezu. He now had enough clothes to fill the Grand Canyon, a dark green sleeping bag, a laptop, some plushies and kind words to cover the next 10 years. Cake? Shota cheered as ectoplasm brought it out. Make a wish. Izuku looked between them all before blowing out the candle. He didn't need to make a wish. It had already come true. Before bed, after everyone had left and Nezu had gone to bed, he took out the bag underneath his bed. He took out the clothes, the notebook, and the partially burnt photo of his mother and himself. The notebook was placed on the shelf, the clothes in the dresser, and the photo was set down on the desk. I think I'm getting better, Mum. Hey, problem child. Get up. You're gonna be late for scaring my students. Shota shook the asleep body awake. Wah? I thought you'd already done that this year? He pushed the hair out his face, opening his eyes to see the older man and groaning at how bright it was. Yes, but no expects a child to do it with me. True. Because only an insane person would do that. Izuku would regret saying that later, but right now he wasn't truly awake nor able to make sense of his own thoughts to feel any kind of remorse. Then call me insane. Just get up and eat or whatever you do normally. Then grab your new sleeping bag and head down to my classroom. Izuku turned over to hide his face in the darkness of the pillow, only to be met with a thud and the floor as he fell, jolting him awake. Oh. He stood up and rubbed his back, hearing a giggling Shota closing the door. He reached the classroom before anyone else, climbing into his sleeping bag and wiggling under the desk like a caterpillar. Are you here yet, problem child? I went to get coffee. Under the desk. Izuku called out, curling up and trying to fall back asleep. The sleeping bag was surprisingly comfortable, though he figured it had to be. After all, it was for sleeping in heavily wooded areas. Perfect. He could hear the chaos in Eraser's voice, sighing in worry for the students about to enter. Just what did they have to put up with every day? How much longer till they get here? 10 minutes. He heard a zip from the area of the voice, then some rustling as Aizawa made his way over to Izuku, grinning. Don't fall asleep. The students started to filter in, sitting in each of their seats. Not one seat was empty by the time the bell rang. Aizawa had a creepy smile as he rose from under the desk, shortly followed by a small boy who seemed to not really care. If there are two. Izuku flinched slightly, unzipping the sleeping bag and stepping out, rubbing his eyes and yawning quietly. The students all let out a collective iwi that made him flush in embarrassment. Uncle Eraser asked me to come and scare you, sorry. He bowed in apology to the class, but no one could bring themselves to hate the little bean before them. You're like 5 minutes away. Oh, and don't tell Nezu. He probably already knows. He knows everything I do 'cause I'm his little rat. Izuku muttered, folding up the bag neatly as the class stared at him with collective shock. Nezu has a son? But he's so human. That's enough. Eraserhead slammed his hands on the desk to direct their attention. Izu, you can go now. And as for you lot, he glared at each student one at a time. I suggest you don't harm him. Izuku took a deep breath as he leant up and whispered in Shota's ear. Fine. Turns out Izu knows how to threaten me into letting him assess you all. So get changed, we're going to the gym. The students all groaned in annoyance as they walked out. Nezu has corrupted you, Izu? Maybe, but now I can help. Izuku smiled and skipped off behind the students, heading toward the gym, notebook in hand. These students definitely had power, but it pained Izuku to see it being underused. It was like someone was personally offending him or stabbing his brain. Between every student, he sighed deeply and shook his head. They looked proud of themselves, Izuku wasn't. Okay, I'm sorry, but you all kinda suck. You're not doing enough. He awkwardly ran a hand through his hair, a nervous smile on display as he ripped out the pages from his book and handed them out among the class. I'm sorry. You don't have to listen to it, I just thought it'd help. Yo, I never thought of this bit. Man, I worked so hard I didn't learn how to go over. I thought Plus Ultra was bull for a while. Thanks, kid. The person ruffled Izuku's hair before walking off, trying out what had been suggested on a training dummy. Nezu's son, do you have an analysis quirk? It'd make sense if he was your father. Izuku tensed and shook his head slightly, wrapping his arms around himself and turning his attention to his shoes, specifically the extra part for an extra joint. Quirkless? Ah, then this makes it all the more impressive. The class collectively nodded and left Izuku to his thoughts as they also began going Plus Ultra. Good job, problem child. Aizawa crouched down and pet Izuku. You made them stronger. Izuku wandered the halls, smiling softly at each person passing as he made his way to the principal's office, paper in hand. He knocked gently before entering, waving slightly at his dad. Little rat. Why are you here? He moved inside, closing the heavy wooden door behind him, before heading to sit down across from the big rat, setting down the paper on the desk. A club application? I just thought, 'cause a lot of the students like my ramblings, so maybe a study or quirk club. You don't have to say yes. A loud bang as a stamp was pressed into the paper in bright green. Approved, thank you. He would have jumped across the desk if his uncle hadn't walked in with a sour expression. Problem child, it's petting time. He giggled slightly, moving over as Aizawa began to pet him. Great. Someone blew up the gym after I told them not to? His face was met with a hand as he shot his head up to look at his uncle. I need the forms to expel them. He looked back down, a bit upset for the kid that was about to be forced out. Though this was a common occurrence with Shota. He felt his eyelids become steadily heavier, lulling him asleep as he fell on Eraserhead, calm as can be. Aw, little rat must be tired. Can you get him to his room, Aizawa? Fine. Nezu had insisted Izuku get a proper detective license if he wished to continue assisting police and pro-heroes, like he'd done over the last few months. So he'd spent the last week practicing non-stop for the written and physical test he'd have to take. The teachers were confident in his abilities, he was not. Though his self-doubt had been decreasing with his therapy sessions, he still had a nagging feeling that he just wasn't good enough sometimes. If he failed this test, he'd disappoint everyone. Detective Tsukachi had also been helping him train, as a favor to the Aizawas. He'd been asked to take him to the test so people would know he was there for the exam. It was better than him being laughed off. Are you ready, Aizawa? Not really. Izuku wrapped his arms around his person, looking around the room at other people preparing to take the exam. You'll do fine. You've trained for this? That's what I'm worried about. He sighed as the detective left and the written exam began. They were fairly standard questions about general police work, like how to apprehend a criminal, interrogation laws, things like that. Izuku felt slightly comforted by the work. He enjoyed answering questions now. Not at all like the first time when he'd redone it 20 times out of pure anxiety. When the written test was over, he stood and walked out for the physical one. He'd have to work with the others for some of it, so perhaps it was best to worm his way into conversation. "Hello, I'm Izuku." He looked up at the three adults that had been talking, smiling. "What are you doing here, kid?" One of them, burly enough to have a strength quirk, crossed his arms and glared at him. "I'm taking the test. On Detective Tsukachi's recommendation." "Tsukachi?" The three looked him up and down. "Well then, nice to meet you. My name's Emmett." Izuku nodded. "Miko." A woman with multicolored eyes did a little salute. "Ko." The last man let out a smile, reaching down to shake Izuku's hand. "It's a pleasure." Izuku grinned back with similar energy, bouncing a little in place. It wasn't long after that someone called for them to all make their way to the training area, splitting them into groups. Izuku managed to stay with Miko and Ko while Emmett left for another group. This is a training simulation. Anyone with a safety device license must use one of the provided ones and rubber bullets. The objective is to assist the heroes, evacuate the citizens and hold off the press. Izuku nodded slightly, already formulating a plan based on their location. "Do either of you have a firearm license?" Ko nodded. "Good. Okay, I think I should help evacuate and assess the situation. I have close combat training if that helps." Miko grinned. "Yeah. You can help me and fend off smaller villains for arresting while Ko tries to shoot from a distance at the main one." "Sounds like a plan." Miko did a thumbs up before running off with Izuku as their timer began. Izuku would mutter suggestions during the simulation into the connected headpieces they were given, mainly focusing on setting up the police line and evacuating others that needed help while Ko shot from rooftops, making the pretend villain more upset. Izuku did one last run about the area, making sure no one remained, before nodding to Miko and Ko. A voice rang over the speakers. "All citizens have been saved, villain has been apprehended, minimal damage done to surroundings." Ko made his way down to them, patting Izuku on the back. "Good job. We might actually pass this." Izuku grinned and nodded, jumping from foot to foot as they made their way out. "Results will be received through mail within the next week." Tsukachi was there to pick him up, asking questions that Izuku happily answered. 2 days later, he got an email saying he'd passed and he could pick up his license when he wanted, as long as it was within the month. He wasted no time telling Nezu, Shota and Hizashi, who promptly presented him with cupcakes. The next day, there was a detective license in his wallet, in its own special section. The next few years blew by quickly, and it was Izuku's 15th birthday before he knew it. The chess tally was now in the thousands and his intelligence had grown exponentially. He was helping pro heroes work all over the country and had a much higher mental health. Most days, you wouldn't see him not smiling. He still had depressed spells, like anyone would, but he always had people he could turn to for that. He loved his new life so much. Over the last year or so, the teachers had taken it upon themselves to help him with his physical strength, stealth, and speed. He was no longer afraid to say he was quirkless. He knew it didn't make him useless, and if anyone tried to prove otherwise, he could knock them off their feet. Not that anyone he knew would in the first place. He was the principal's son and both Eraserhead and present Mick's nephew. He assisted in teaching during students' free periods too, helping train the next set of heroes for the future. It never harmed to have connections. He'd helped with a sludge incident a few months before, involving his ex-childhood friend. He assisted the heroes, helped with crowd control and texted all heroes that needed to be on scene ASAP. Kaken hadn't liked it when he found out that not only was Deku alive, but he was pretty much a hero. Deku wasn't there when he'd gone to teach him a lesson though. Izuku walked through the school, straight to the library on his birthday. He still had books to return after all. Each student greeted him with a smile and a congratulations, and he felt on top of the world as he thanked every one of them. He finally reached his destination and placed the book away after scanning it and logging it in. Izuku checked the time and hummed in thought. He still had time to grab something to read before his match with Nezu. He scanned the aisles he walked down, brushing a hand against some of his favorites before stopping in a section he hadn't been to before. A new topic to study. More things to write. He'd been working his way through the library and this was the last section. Then he'd go back to the beginning and start again. He checked out a book and headed back home, looking over the contents page. A book on myths, interesting. Mostly Greek. He muttered as he reached the living room of his home, sitting down and putting the book behind the timer. Are you ready, little rat? I'm ready. Izuku added a point to Nezu's side when they finished. Do you remember our first games? Don't remind me. He muttered, burying his face in his hands and shaking his head. I was so bad. You weren't bad, you did beat me a couple times. Nezu stood as he poured them both more tea. You've gotten much stronger. I'm almost upset at how much you've grown. He sighed sadly, staring into the cup. Don't be. I'm happier now too, and growing up just means I'll be older, Dad. Izuku sipped from his own cup, leaning back against the couch and smiling. I'll be the first quirkless hero too. Nezu wiped away a non-existent tear as he nodded. They played another game, then cooked together and ate. Then Izuku went to go help with the students. He knew they weren't doing much right now, but he'd hacked Shota's email and found out they were going out for a fancy dinner that night. And if Nezu noticed him hacking, he didn't say anything. Nezu was the one to teach him after all. Izuku held his after-school study group as usual, smiling the whole time. As the dinner got closer, his excitement grew. He was tempted to end his club early, but with midterms approaching, he didn't want to let them down. He rushed home after the club, a folder and a book in his arms. Izuku closed the door behind him and smiled as Nezu greeted him. There's a suit on your bed, get changed and we'll head out to dinner. I assume you already know. I do. Izuku giggled slightly and ran upstairs, changing hurriedly and fixing his hair before running back down. Let's go. The Aizawas were already there, each in a suit. Hisashi's was white with gold accents and Shota's was black with gold accents. That's one thing they both liked, gold and each other. Happy birthday, problem child. Thank you, uncles. Izuku bounced in place, a beaming smile on display. Can we go in? Of course. Nezu led the way, the hostess didn't stop them. Even if they did go to the wrong table, which they didn't, they had plenty of spare seats. This is our table. He pulled out a chair for the birthday boy, which he gladly took. I love my family. Izuku had insisted on doing the entrance exam, despite his familial situation. He just had to prove to himself that he deserved a spot and that no one would try to defeat him if he got in without trying. He was there before anyone else, the school being a quick walk away from his home with Nezu, thinking of ways to prepare. An obstacle course and a test, right? He'd aced the test, obviously. He'd beaten Nezu in chess multiple times. The Nezu was extremely smart. The obstacle course would be harder, but he'd had training from all the teachers in UA in many different ways. Yes, he'd be fine. He had the advantage. The next person to arrive wasted no time sitting near the back of the room and brooding. Judging by his red and blonde hair, perfectly split in the middle, some sort of split quirk? Or possibly two, though that was unlikely. The next was a boy in a suit, definitely custom pants though, so he had some sort of quirk that affected his legs. Many others filtered in, some began chatting, others began messing with pens. Izuku tried to find out as much as he could about all the other contestants' quirks during that time. Present Mike walked in, announcing the beginning of the exams. Hey ya, listeners. Are you ready? First is the written exam. Then we go outside for the practical. Let's go. 3, 2. The test began and Izuku read through all the questions before beginning to answer, taking care in his work. He looked up, once done at the timer he had time to go over it a few times, but he'd just do it once. Otherwise he'd panic and spiral. Izuku walked up once he'd finished checking his answers and set the test down on Present Mic's desk. Mike smiled at Izuku softly before sending him off to wait for the time to be over. That's the game. We'll collect your results while you get changed. Make sure to stretch. Izuku waved at Mike as he left for the changing rooms, humming to himself happily. He was in simple sports clothes, comfortable and loose so they wouldn't restrict him. He walked out to the obstacle course with confidence. He'd be able to see all their quirks and help them improve after this. Even if he'd never see some of them again. He stretched in the sunlight, smiling at the contestants who walked past. Are you ready to go plus ultra on this obstacle course? All use of quirks is allowed as long as you don't harm another contestant. We've split you into groups to compete. The groups are now, for dramatic effect, on this board. Mike did jazz hands. Izuku snorted. He noticed he was in the last group and bounced as he moved to get a better spot of the upcoming race. The first one blew Izuku back, literally. One of them had a wind quirk while the other raced forward on ice, using it to slick the area and move faster. He was in awe as the wind quirked one barely beat the split-haired one. That could have been one of the fastest races ever. Izuku assessed them all, even asking Mike for a notebook at one point to take notes, before finally going up to the starting line. Ready? Go! Izuku ran forward, jumping over the hurdles and climbing up the net wall, concentration clear on his face. He was in second place. The boy in first was the one that had been in the suit, and he had an engine quirk, which made sense with the alterations to his clothes. He was using it to the full advantage once down from the net, enhancing his running. The fire stopped after a while though, and Izuku took that as an opportunity to get ahead in the last few seconds before the end of the race. First place, Izuku Aizawa. Then Tenya Ida. Mike announced, proud of his nephew. Izuku was proud of himself too, panting heavily as he flopped to the ground. I did it. Though I'm certain I'll have to take the public entrance exam, I am impressed. The boy, Tenya Ida, fixed his glasses and sat by Izuku. That was rather impressive. Thanks. I'm sure you'll get in too. Though robots would be better for your quirk. Is there a limit to how long you can use them? Izuku looked at him with a smile. Ida was nice and he didn't want to go throughout school without any friends his age. Yes, they have a tendency to overheat. I think if you powered up kicks for breaking robots and ran without using your engines, you'd have a good shot. It'd increase efficiency and let your engines cool in between robots. He sat up, shaking Ida's hand. Thank you, Aizawa. I shall try that if I have to do the public exam. Ida stood and left, his serious exterior hiding his sobbing, upset interior. Izuku was there during the recordings for the recommendation students. He felt bad when he heard a denial for Ida, but reassured himself that Ida would be there in the public exam, ready to win. Recommendation students were, himself, Shoto Todoroki, Yaoyorozu Momo, Setsuna Tokage and Juzo Hananuki. Apparently the wind-quirked boy had dropped out after his race, no one knew why. He was also there for the next recording of the public exam's results a few months later, where he heard Tenya Ida be accepted in and did a little wiggle dance behind the camera. He grabbed his laptop out his sleeping bag once his excitement settled and cracked his knuckles before beginning to research all the students that had been accepted. He already planned on giving them folders to improve. He was just lucky he had access to government files. Then he heard, Katsuki Bakugo, this is your hero academia? He froze on the spot, gut sinking and thoughts spiraling. Of course Kaken got into UA. He'd been planning on it since they were 4. He dared not type another word, moving away from the laptop before he broke down in front of everyone and cost them recording time. I'm going to get a snack. Make sure you're back before anyone worries. Mike didn't look up from the list of students, trusting his nephew. Got it? Izuku left, walking to a drink machine and sighing quietly as he put in the money and pressed the number button for plain water. Kaken. He opened the bottle and drank from it, closing his eyes. Maybe he could make an appointment with Hound Dog before the school year started. He'd have to make sure Nezu didn't find out and expel Bakugo before the year even started, but he definitely needed someone to talk to as he began crying into the water bottle. It had taken 8 years for him to realize all his friendship was abuse and he didn't think Bakugo would ever have stopped if he hadn't disappeared. He was lucky the halls were empty so no one could hear his shameful sobbing. The first day of school. Izuku grinned in excitement, packing his bag and adjusting his outfit. Though he had great knowledge, tying ties was not a part of that. He'd have to ask Nezu when he went down for breakfast. Maybe Kaken changed. Maybe Ida would remember him. Maybe he wouldn't die the moment Kaken stepped in the room. One could hope. He tried one last time to tie his tie before giving up and going down to breakfast. Are you excited, little rat? Izuku nodded rapidly, getting Nezu to tie his tie before plopping down in his usual seat and beginning to nom. I'll be on the receiving end of the caterpillar awareness ceremony for the first time. And I'll get to make friends with people in my class instead of heroes. Nezu nodded. Perhaps we'll have to move our own chess time to after school, so you can concentrate on your friends and such? His little rat nodded, smiling at him as he stood and lofted the bag onto his back. I can't wait. See you later, Dad. He ran off, running to school as if someone were chasing him. There possibly was, his anxiety like chasing him. He was the first to class, finding his seat and setting up what would be his desk for the next year. He began placing down folders on each of the desks, matching each one to its owner. Shota Aizawa groaned into his coffee, sitting in his desk chair. Izu, can you do it? I'm tired. Sorry, uncle. It's your job and I don't want to be defeated right out the gate. Izuku raised his hands in mock surrender, grinning. Finani. Shota climbed into his sleeping bag and wiggled under the desk just before the next student walked in. Shoto Todoroki, Fire and Ice Quirk, child of number 2 pro hero Endeavor. He sat in his seat, looking at the small folder but not opening it yet. Then Tenya Ida, who greeted Izuku warmly, thanking him for his advice. Mashireo Ojiro, Rikido Sato, Mizo Shoji, Hantasiro, Momo Yairozu, Denki Kaminari, Ijiro Kirishima, Mina Ashido, Yuga Oyama, Tsu Azui, Achiko Uraraka, Koji Koda, Toru Hagecure, Fumikage Tokoyami and Minoru Mineta all filtered in 10 minutes before class. Then finally, Katsuki Bakugo. He clicked his tongue, already fed up with all the extras in the room as he made way to his seat. Then he saw stupid Deku in the seat behind him. He glared with the anger of 1,000 men, popping explosions off his hands. I thought you took my advice and swan dived into a fire, Deku? Izuku felt it all flooding back, the terror, the sadness, the betrayal. But he was stronger now, he could stand up to Kaken. He took a deep breath and smiled sweetly, hidden anger in his eyes. Actually, Kaken, I was busy being adopted by Principal Nezu. Bakugo froze mid-step, then recovered and slammed his hands on the desk. Liar. I don't lie unless it's for my amusement, Kaken. Izuku didn't drop his calm exterior, everyone was watching. And Uncle Shota is right there. You wouldn't want to be expelled on your first day, would you? He could see Bakugo thinking before he clicked his tongue and left for his desk. This isn't over, Deku. Damn it, problem child. You ruined my situational awareness exercise. Aizawa unzipped the sleeping bag, dropping it unceremoniously on his chair. Sorry, uncle. In the classroom you have to call me Mr. Aizawa, problem child. Izuku smirked. Then you have to call me Aizawa too. Aizawa cursed quietly and shook his head, putting a hand on the table as he took out a gym uniform. We're going outside. Get changed? The students all headed to the hall, splitting into 3 groups, boy, girl, non-binary, and going into their respective changing rooms. Izuku knew the school by heart, so he wasted no time heading to the usual trial area Aizawa used at the beginning of every year when he and Ito were ready. The rest followed, varying levels of excitement and terror between each of them. We're doing fitness tests, you get to use your quirks? Aizawa yawned, holding out a ball. 11 tests, 1 at the bottom is expelled. He didn't listen to protests, chucking Bakugo a ball. Let's begin. Some people were very creative with their quirks, getting higher scores easily. Some were at a disadvantage though, and didn't get anything notable. The student who'd gotten the lowest score, according to the board it was Hagecure, was shaking in the back. She'd been narrowly beaten by Mineta, and that was possibly worse than expulsion. What happens now? Kirishima spoke up, worried as they reached their classroom, settling down. Nothing. It was a logical ruse. The face Aizawa made would haunt all their nightmares, but the words comforted them all, though they still complained as they made their way back to the classroom. Your next class will be heroics with dash. Aizawa was cut off by a slammed open door, a bright yellow, blue, white and red costume covered muscle as a booming voice yelled into the room. I am here. All Might. Izuku was extremely tense, staring at All Might as the other students cheered. He stayed in his seat, covering his face with his hands. Yeah, it's All Might. Now get out my classroom. Aizawa zipped himself back into the sleeping bag, intending on taking a nap, as the class ran out with All Might. Izuku walked. The green-haired boy had a surprisingly dull outfit, with knives, one-person capture nets, and 2 phones. It was fading green to black from top to bottom, with a seemingly normal mask to cover his face, that was up despite the lesson not having started. All Might watched the boy fiddle with his weapons. Are you all in your hero costumes? Yes, very good. Today will be a hero exercise in groups of 2. For example, Group A might be the villains and Group F might be the heroes. The objective is to get to the dangerous thing the villains are guarding or arrest both of them. Come draw groups. All Might held out a box. Everyone formed a line and took turns, excited. Group B and E will go first. B will be the villains. Izuku smiled slightly. He could get this over with and get away from All Might. Maybe if he let himself get injured a bit, he could even avoid all the other fights and spend the entire time in Recovery Girl's office. Bakugo would be planning on harming him anyway. Achiko Uraraka, right? I'm Izuku Aizawa. He shook the girl's hand before turning to a notebook attached to his outfit. He opened it and began working out a plan. Bakugo will come after me first, so you focus on Ida. He has an engine quirk but it gets overheated. Maybe try to lure him out and chase you and then I can retrieve it, or the other way around. I can go after Ida. She responded surprisingly well to being told what to do. Preparation time is over, now beginning the exercise. Izuku ran in, heading a different direction from Achiko. His prediction was right, as soon after the game began, he could hear the telltale sound of explosions. Deku! Bakugo was getting louder as he got closer, glaring around in each room. He finally reached stupid Deku and charged, firing off explosions in his hands. Izuku dodged, rolling to the side and running behind him. You let your anger control you, Kaken. He charged again, growling as Deku dodged again. Shut up, stupid quirkless Deku. Bakugo aimed at Izuku, fed up. He pulled the trigger on his gauntlets and let off a giant explosion, smirking with insanity. The Deku he knew would run and hide, but he'd yet to realize this wasn't that Deku. This was a new Deku who managed to get out the biggest part of damage, escaping with a few major cuts and burns, and ran forward, wrapping the capture tape around his extended arm. I win, Kaken. He smelled his own burning flesh, wincing in pain as he began to run. Bakugo Katsuki has been captured. All Might announced, still in shock from both what he'd heard and what he'd seen. Where are you, Achiko? Izuku tapped into his mic piece, running up the stairs. I'm on the 3rd floor, the bomb's on the 5th. Izuku nodded and climbed out a window, heading up 4 floors and climbing in before searching for it. Ida had cleared the room, leaving nothing for a defenseless Uraraka to use. He removed a knife from his pocket, charging forward. Ida was gone in a second, weapon in hand as he charged around the room. Ochako used these. He held out his hand, rubber bullets settled innocently. She took them, raising them all into the air above them. Wait till my signal then release. He dodged another kick, rolling to the side. Ida was in the middle of the room now, laughing with villainy. Now. He dashed forward as bullets fell, Ida moving to protect himself. Capture tape was wrapped around the metal boy quickly. Team A wins. He smiled weakly as the effects of severe burns caught up to him. I'm gonna go to Recovery Girl, he mutters, letting his feet guide him through the school walls. He walked in and sat on the bed, smiling at the familiar old woman. I got burnt in the heroics class. Sorry. She whacked him up the head with her wooden cane, shaking her head slightly. Honestly, you should have been more careful. I know. Izuku grabbed his phone and texted Hound Dog before letting Recovery Girl kiss his wound. He grew incredibly tired, laying down to take a nap. Thank you. I am going to end him. Shota was barely being held back by present Mike and Nezu as he seethed with rage. Shota, please calm down. You cannot defeat the #1 pro hero. Nezu managed to close the door, sighing in relief as it locked. I'll defeat that FING kid then. He seethed, teeth gritted painfully against each other. They harm Izuku. Nezu nodded, moving back to his desk as he took out some forms. I will expel that student and Tashinori will be severely reprimanded. That seemed to calm him a bit and Aizawa stopped struggling against his husband's hold. Izuku will also be monitored through his recovery by yours truly. Make sure he doesn't do anything daft. Like he ever would. Shota scoffed, moving to sit down with Hisashi by his side. I'm not letting him hold his club for the next week either. He mutters, arms crossed. Agreed. Nezu nods, signing a few forms. Izuku jolted awake from his sleep at the sound of a loud alarm, announcing a break-in. He relaxed at the code, laying back down with a sigh. They're going crazy instead of staying in a classroom, aren't they? Yep. The old lady was holding a pen, an amused smile on her face. Would you like to announce what they're supposed to do? Probably should, but you know how Nezu's love for chaos rubbed off on me. He turned on his side, yawning into his hand. Do you think the press will clear up soon? I doubt it. Damned vultures love new things to report. You can bet they'll be back again as soon as they find out you're Nezu's son. He sighed, nodding slightly. I can see that, though I doubt they'd try actually breaking in. Nezu and I would plan something before they could take a breath to scream. He giggled slightly, light and full of air, as he grabbed a magazine from a nearby table. He froze, head turning to look out the window. Something feels off. You're just tired, dearie. Go back to sleep. Okay. He laid back down, head resting against the soft white pillow. Bakugo Katsuki has been expelled for his misconduct? Izuku froze, looking up from his newest notebook with wide eyes. Take that as a warning to listen to your teachers. He got Kaken expelled. No, it wasn't his fault. Kaken hadn't listened to the teacher. He had no part in this. He nodded to himself, returning to his book. Everyone get changed, we're going to USJ. You can choose if you want your hero costumes or just a gym uniform. Izuku stood, grabbing the case with his costume and nodding to his uncle before walking out the room, heading straight for the changing rooms with the rest of the class following him like ducklings. He was the first outside too, smiling as he talked with a very tired Aizawa. His face suddenly dropped. I'm hacking into the USJ cameras on the bus. Something felt off yesterday. Okay, problem child. Just get on the bus, everyone else is coming. Okie dokie, uncle. His smile returned as he settled down, students following suit. Chatter is quick to cover the quiet. Izuku actually preferred it as he tapped away at the keys on the laptop in front of him. Midoriya? Karo? He looked up, smiling at the frog girl. Is Aizawa-sensei really your uncle? Technically. Present Mike and Eraserhead are my uncles and Principal Nezu is my dad. He giggled, returning back to the screen as more green text appeared. Ida covered his mouth. Tensei talks about you still. He said you're very smart. He told me not to make you upset, so I shall do my best to become your friend. Tensei was so fun when he was here. He would pick me up and run around the school with me. It made Uncle Shota deeply concerned though. He squinted at the screen, a pout forming. We still chat sometimes. Are you okay, dude? Kirishima looked over. Yeah, just working. He mutters, not looking up anymore. Working? You're a first year? Uraraka tilted her head. MHM. A first year with a detective license, a safety device license and analytics defeats to rival professionals. I'm working on the USJ cameras. Something felt off about yesterday. The alarms? He nodded, chewing his lip as another set of code came up. He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting across the screen. If something happens, I need you to run out and get help, Ida. You're the fastest one. Ida nodded, the bus turning serious until the trip was over. And Kirishima? Yes, Brosif? You have to protect Haikure, Uraraka, Koda and Jairu. Kirishima nods, bumping his fists together. I'm gonna be so manly. Yayorozu, medical supplies. Don't waste your lipids though. Denki, don't short circuit. You're a human taser, not One Punch Man. Brute. Denki pouts. The rest of you would do pretty well in confrontation though, so don't worry. He flashes a smile at them all before returning to his screen, flipping between tabs. His muttering starts up. All Might, time, meeting, missing person, Quirk? His eyes shoot open. Wait. No way. What's going on? Kirishima tries to get a peek at the screen, only for Izuku to slam it shut. Holy shirts. Shirts? USJ better not defeat anyone, 'cause boy do I have some information. The bus stops and Izuku climbs off. Izuku hops inside the USJ, waving at 13 slightly with a smile. Morning, Izuku. 13 chuckles. Now let's begin. Izuku nods along to the speech, but he's not really paying attention. Something just seems off. And then it happens. The lights dim and mist forms in the plaza, thugs spilling out with varying levels of smugness. All Might's no dash. A bang rings out, and the one with hands stumbles back, visible injury from his arm. Under Section 28 of the Hero School Act, any student is allowed to use force against what they know to be a villain confrontation. This includes quirk and weapon use. He glares. Damn. Kaminari nods in approval. Izuku chuckles quietly at the reaction, rolling his shoulders to release some tension. Everyone, the plan. The class collectively nod, and Ida runs out the now closing USJ doors while Yayarosa grabs a protein bar, preparing to make medical supplies. I recommend you leave. Izuku's kind smile becomes toxic, eyes glowing with a silent threat. Nezu doesn't take kindly to those who harm his kid. He points the safety device. Then again, I don't take too kindly to being harmed myself either. It's just a stupid kid. We can get him. One yells and charges up. Izuku smirks, feral, and shoots. Another bang sounds out as the thug falls to the floor. Who's next? Izuku waits. If you're all sure then. He takes out a phone, tapping away with one hand while the other keeps focus on the villains. Flamethrowers and net safety devices raise from the floor. What? I didn't say I wouldn't confrontation. He laughs. No. Get him. Izuku falls back, phone hitting the floor as he coughs. He reaches for the phone. Come on, I just needed 2 more. His thoughts trail off. Nomu. I order you to get off me. The Nomu does so. What? Nomu, get him. Nomu, release me. Nomu, stop listening to Shigaraki. Izuku smirks, grabbing his phone and dusting it off, ignoring the internal bleeding he definitely has. Now, I just need to send a message. Izuku tucks the phone away once the text is sent and looks to the 2 main villains. Mistman, I have a question. Shigaraki growls. How much do you remember? Excuse me? How much do you remember? Izuku repeats, walking down the stairs, closer to the villains. From your time as a human? What are you talking about? Well, you are a Nomu, aren't you? He tilts his head. Let's see. 3 people went missing, one with a cloud quirk, another with a telekinesis quirk, and one with a tracking quirk. That's very useful to make someone who can teleport multiple things. He hums, now in front of Kurogiri. Oboro, Shirsu, and Taraku. Behind them, Aizawa drops his knife. Oh, Oboro? Kurogiri. We're leaving. Don't bother with the extras. We have a new objective. Shigaraki smirks, eyes narrowed and focused on Izuku as he sinks into the darkness of Kurogiri's warp. So, that information. It was about Oboro? Aizawa glances at Izuku. He hums and shrugs. A little. Nah, that's All Might's mentor's grandson. The one with the hands? That one. Which means super secret person isn't actually dead. He chuckles quietly and leans back. I told you so, ass Might. Aizawa nods, tucking his head away in the scarf. What did they do to you, Oboro? Izuku, give me a full rundown on everything you've discovered about the recent break-in. Nezu folds his paws, staring across the table at his son, while All Might, Tsukachi, and Aizawa sit around them. The boy nods, opening a laptop. During the bus ride to the USJ, I checked the cameras and looked for more information on that quirk used to detoy the gate. During which, I also informed 1A of what to do should there be a villain confrontation. He types away at the screen. I discovered a quirk that existed about 14 years ago, a decay quirk, 5-point activation. Said quirk user's name is Shimura Tenko, who was presumed dead during a villain confrontation that defeated his family. Shimura? Yagi gulps. Yes. Grandson of your predecessor? He nods, looking at the man, then back to the screen. Originally, I assumed said quirk was taken by All for One, and subsequently disabled when you defeated him, but the use of it proves my original theory otherwise. Meaning? Nezu raises an eyebrow. All for One is alive. He's using Shimura Tenko as a successor, which implies he's gotten a quirk that can pass down his own. Izuku turns the screen. I recently uncovered audio from said villain. He's talking to a doctor by the name of Tsubasa about his vitals, which means he still has some lasting effect from the fight. But he's alive. Yes. He nods to the hero. And Oboro? Aizawa hides in his scarf once more. During a fight he was taken. I found footage that suggests he'd been kidnapped, almost dead. I began working on getting into the doctor's records, as well as looking at possible missing persons that could be used in an experiment. He clicks down on the spacebar, a video beginning to play. A boy, Oboro Aizawa recognizes, is being hauled through alleyways, shifting in and out of vision as the kidnapper uses their quirk. He presses the spacebar again, stopping the video. Once in the doctor's records, I found several beings called Nomo, all used kidnapped quirk users. Said creatures were experiments to create powerful enough beings to defeat All Might. He turns the screen back to himself. Kurogiri, the warp Nomu, is a mixture of 3 quirks, all forced in Oboro's body, combining certain parts of their brains and erasing memories via quirk. Aizawa gulps, shivering. Kurogiri is currently serving Tenko as a sort of supervisor, if what I've found is anything to go by. All for One has an army of experiments and a successor? All Might looks between them all. Yes. Izuku closes the laptop. Said army can only be controlled through direct orders. Kurogiri is currently the only Nomu with intelligence able to speak. Shimura Tenko is being both brainwashed and conditioned to see heroes as evil. He's determined to defeat All Might for harming All for One, the person who saved him. He's unaware of the fact All for One forced Tenko to use his quirk on his family, acting as if he's a savior when heroes didn't come to save him. Nezu takes a deep breath, nodding. Thank you, Izuku. You're getting very good at this. Izuku smiles, dropping his serious demeanor as he nods. Thanks, Dad. Nezu smiles back, gesturing for the boy to come over. Izuku does, cuddling into the soft fur, yawning quietly. I think it's nap time, yes? He mutters, clinging close. Love you, Dad. I love you too, son. Izuku stands at the front of the classroom, looking over the other students. Due to unforeseen circumstances and the dangers therein, the heroics course shall not be participating in the sports festival. We will have this time to train, as well as hold small workshops with the other courses. Power Loader has let us work in the lab during the festival, for if we have any ideas for our own gear. He takes out several large folders. We will also be holding a makeup session in the USJ, which we will be recording to send to agencies that you may want to attend during the internship week. Aizawa sips his coffee from the corner of the room, relaxing as much as he can with problem nephew here. Izuku hands out the folders, each personalized with names on the front. These are suggestions for the week, as well as the new schedule. I have paired people in groups with 1B to help with relations. You should all find something to bond over within the week, and it's a good way to practice teamworking for future reference. The door slams open, and a very loud blonde throws the folder on the ground. Why aren't we participating in the festival? Why is it always blondes? Izuku sighs quietly and picks up the packet, brushing it off. Due to the recent confrontation, neither class has been able to practice rescue training. It's also so villains don't find out our weaknesses on live TV. The boy screeches, glaring. This is all one's fault. Izuku clears his throat, shoving the folder in the blonde's arms. Minoma Nito, I suggest you return to class before I prevent you from participating in internships. I am running on no sleep and 5 jars of coffee. I don't need your ego in the mix too. You can't tell me what to do, 1A scum. Actually I can. I'm Nezu's son. He turns Minoma around and shoves him out the room. Goodbye. The door closes with a loud slam. Ahem, problem child. Aizawa looms over the short greenette. What was that about sleep? You don't get to say anything, hypocrite. Izuku huffs, stalking to his seat and flopping down. Besides, I had work. Work isn't more important than sleeping. Aizawa sighs, taking out his phone. I'm telling Nezu. You know you're not supposed to work past 10. You tell Dad and I won't tell you where Oboro is. F dash. The teacher looks at him. Wait, you know where he is? What work did you think I was doing? Izuku tilts his head. I got in contact with Jiren as Deku, paid for info on the league, connected it to my tracking software, found Handman and his army. He shrugs. Wasn't that hard? A vent opens to the room, and down hops the part rat in all his glory. Son, my amazing Izuku, you forget about all the security I have on campus, and the tracker I installed in your arm. Shoot. Izuku facepalms into the wooden desk, leaving a red mark on his forehead. I'm gonna be in bed for the whole day, aren't I? Yes. Yes, you are. Nezu takes the boy's hand, tugging him along. And your Nana is going to perform a checkup? No. Not Nana. Izuku begs, though he still follows the rat. The door closes. So, who's Nana? Then he looks around at the others, who all shrug. Recovery girl. Aizawa sighs quietly. Let's just get on with class. Izuku grins as he walks into class the next day, stretching his arms above his head. Izuku is back to full battery. I'm ready for school. You don't actually need school though. Aizawa rolls his eyes. Why are you in your gym uniform? Did you seriously not read my schedule? I'm offended, uncle. Izuku shakes his head disapprovingly. We're doing joint exercises with 1B today, outside. Not in hero costumes. Oh yeah. The man grabs his own folder, taking out a few bits of paper. I just assumed you'd be teaching. I was going to nap. But I won't. He grins. See you outside, uncle. I hate him so much. Lies. Comes from down the hall, leaving Aizawa hiding a smile in his scarf. Izuku holds Nezu in his lap as the teachers go over internships. His head tilts a few times as he dozes, only to snap back up. Ida wants to go to the Manuel agency? Aizawa looks at the paper. Don't let him. He yawns slightly, resting his head in Nezu's fur. Nowhere near Hosu, hero defeater. Nezu pats his son's arm gently. You can go home. Comfy. He nuzzles. Dad cuddles supremacy. Nezu chuckles quietly and nods. What are young Ida's backups? All in Hosu actually. Aizawa sighs. And none with the Ingenium agency. You'd think he'd want to be with his brother more. Put him with Ten then. Izuku smiles at the teacher. He needs to see Tenchan can still work as a hero anyway. Nezu nods in agreement. And tell them not to let him out into the field. Aizawa nods and writes it down. 2 rats, surprised you haven't taken down the hero killer yourself? Izuku perks up. Wait. Nezu smirks. That's not a bad idea. Not at all. The boy grins. We just have to work out his patterns and quirk. And I already have my theories. Like a paralysis quirk. Nezu nods. That would make sense. We should discuss this more in private. Aizawa facepalms onto the wooden table. What have I done? Now everyone is here, Nezu grins. I begin the meeting to discuss the capture of hero killer Stain. Not that I doubt your abilities, but Stain has evaded capture for years. How are you going to catch him? With our secret weapon. Nezu pulls Izuku out from under the table. My son. Izuku waves with a giggle. I'm a secret weapon. Oh my gods. Aizawa sighs, pinching the bridge of his nose. Izuku pulls out a remote, turning to the whiteboard which is now displaying a very colorful slide for the introduction to Stain. So, we begin with what we know. He presses the button, and it flips to the next slide. Quirk. I suspect it to be a blood-based paralysis quirk, as the living subjects of his confrontations have all said they were harm and then felt frozen. But a simple bruise wouldn't cause that. Everyone would be paralyzed. So, it has to draw blood. Possibly he even has to injurist it, but that's speculation. The group all nod. Next. History. Another slide. I believe he used to be the vigilante Stendhal, as the patterns are similar and they have the same kind of goals, as well as a large gap of time between the 2 personas. Is there any way to confirm this? Nezu looks over the slide. Not unless we ask, But I did note that Stendhal lost his nose near the end of his vigilante career, and Stain doesn't have a nose really either. The rat nods and gestures him to continue. Next is patterns. He confrontations 4 heroes each area, defeating 3 and leaving the other as a message, debilitating their career. Stain has confrontationed 3 in Hosu, so the next target will be there and it will be a takedown. Do we know who it is? Native. Izuku looks at the hero in question. I found a suspicious amount of research on their patrol routes in a cafe computer, as well as tons of articles on their heroic deeds and income. Native gulps. That's why I'm here. Yes. He sighs quietly. There's a small ping from Izuku's pocket. Oh, Stain's on the move. He opens a laptop, connecting it to the screen, opening video feed that's focused on a roof-jumping hero killer. He's not heading toward your routes? He furrows his brows. Is it another hero? No. Nezu taps on the screen. This alley. Izuku nods and zooms in on it as Stain enters. There's 2 distinct yellow eyes, and the white of a suit shirt that can be made out. He's making contact with the League of Villains. Does this mean he'll be using them to confrontation the heroes now? Nezu looks at his son. Izuku puts a fist to his mouth in thought, slowly shaking his head. Stain works alone, and their goals are different. He tilts his head back, looking at the ceiling. If we're lucky, he'll defeat the League. If we're not, we can expect a large-scale villain confrontation tonight. I thought he wouldn't be working with them? Why would there be a large villain confrontation? Izuku sits down, typing at the laptop. Shigaraki has a short temper and tends to take it out on random people, random objects. If Stain not only refuses to join, but confrontations as well, then Shigaraki might release more Nomu somewhere. I'm not certain where. I see. Nezu hums in thought. What should we do? I need at least 3 heroes as well as Native to fight the hero killer. He's used to fighting solo and in dark, isolated places. The rest of the heroes should be on high alert. Have the Idaitan agency work on rescue, make sure all hero students aren't in any crossfire. Endeavor shouldn't be too close, make sure he doesn't get involved. Any and all heroes with water should be around in case he is. He sighs quietly. Anything else? I'll send it in an email. You don't want to hear me rambling for a few hours. Izuku smiles sheepishly, chuckling to himself. Dad, can you make your tea please? Of course. Izuku's definitely glad he planned for this. Definitely not for this level of destruction, but he did plan for a Tamura tantrum TM. He turns his eyes away from the city at movement in the corner of his eyes. Stain is headed for the target? He whispers in his calm. Copy. Are you sure this is safe? I am 79.23% sure our plan will end with you alive. That's not 100%. As Izuku follows the villain, eyes narrowed in seriousness. Native. That's the cue. You are a fake hero. Can't move dash. Eraserhead, move in. I know. The underground hero hops off the roof, landing behind Stain, hair raising as he uses his quirk. A knife grazes across the villain's cheek, startling him. Native stands, moving into a fighting stance. An ambush? Stain chuckles. With only 2 heroes? I've beat 2 heroes. It's actually 4 heroes and a certified genius. Izuku steps out the alley, smiling. Hi, I'm Midoriya. We have Nezu, Eraserhead, Present Mike, Native, and me. I would explain their purposes, but that'd give you an advantage. Stain huffs slightly. I can fight more. Stain, or is it Stendhal? Can I ask why you think All Might is a true hero? Stain smirks behind his mask. He fights with a smile, working not for public or monetary dash. He falls as 2 safety device shots hit each his shoulders, stopping his arms from moving. Well, guess we didn't need everyone. Izuku hums in thought. Why aren't you a hero already again? Aizawa works on removing the weapons, tying up the angered villain that keeps attempting to bite him. Izuku shrugs, doing grabby hands to his shorter rat dad. I am small. Too danger. No friends. Nezu indulges his son, wrapping him in a gentle. I wouldn't let him anyway. Aizawa nods. We should help with the bigger issue. Mike would cause too much damage if he used his quirk, so he needs to focus on calming people. Izuku nuzzles in the fur. Aizawa, focus on making sure Indehor can't use his quirk please. Native, search for all the people stuck in buildings. I shall stay here with Stain and Izuku until the authorities arrive. The three heroes nod and run off. Stain wiggles about. I will not be defeated. Izuku pats his back gently. Tough luck, but I agree with your ideologies, mostly, but you spend too much time defeating. Exposes are so much more effective. What would you know? Your father is a hero. I know. But he works on helping the next generations and looks after me. Uncle Aizawa and Hisashi look after me too, and tell me off if I don't get enough sleep. But Indehor is a massive deej that uses overwhelming conflict to get his way and shouldn't be a hero. Stain looks up at the boy. I shall tell you this as I believe you have a bright future. Oh. Watch out for the League of Villains. They have a picture of you. Oh. Izuku and Nezu share a look. Izuku. Aizawa snaps the boy out his thoughts. You aren't working on your assignment. Is everything okay? He nods, looking at the blank paper. Just a bit preoccupied. Stain. They have a picture of you. He nods again, beginning to write. It's fine. If you say so. In preparation for the final exams, Izuku will be hosting an after-school club, based on improving any weaknesses you all have. Aizawa sighs. Attending is not mandatory, but definitely recommended. The boy in question waves at the class. I already made packets. Of course you did. Izuku looks over the students who came with a smile. I'm splitting you into 3 groups, academic, physical, and quirk. They nod and he begins separating them. He stops at Kaminari. Do you have dyslexia? What's that? It's like words and letters move by themselves. Oh then yes. Called it? He takes out a book and a pink-colored tint from his bag. Try using the tint on the pages. It should help, but tell me if it doesn't. Denki shoots a thumbs up and walks off to the table. Yaoyorozu. He smiles at the girl. Let's talk about your quirk. Yes. Could you, potentially, make gases? If I know how it's formed, yes. What about midnight sleeping gas? I'm unsure as to how to form that. Here. He holds out 2 paces of paper. All the components, and the layout. Yes, I should be able to make it now. She reads it over, smiling. Could you also, hypothetically, put it in a hand grenade? It'd take some effort to figure out that formation, but yes. How many lipids would that take? About the same amount as a regular hand grenade. So you could make upwards of 50? And gas masks? On a good day. She nods, eyes widening in understanding. Thank you. Izuku stands abruptly near the end of class. I'm out. Good luck with your practical exams. You're not doing it with us? Kaminari pouts. Nepotism. No, I have a much harder exam. Izuku sighs. I'm not allowed to tell you what it is, but I should be back to see at least one battle. Hopefully. Are you fighting villains? This seems like a villain thing. You're not wrong. Izuku walks to the door and opens it. Bye. I truly envy you all. Izuku steps into Nezu's office, sighing. Tracking the league? Really? Why'd you chose this for my final exam? We need to know their whereabouts so we can protect you. Ugig. I'm not writing the rest, just know Izuku passes. Izuku. Uraraka waves him over. We're all going shopping before camp. Wanna come? Sorry, I'm not allowed off campus until camp. He frowns. Stupid villains. They're ruining his relationships. Oh, by then. Have fun. She waves and runs off with the rest of the class. Izuku slumps down in a chair. Bye. Something on your mind, little pup? Nezu moves a chess piece, then looks up at his son. Uraraka invited me out, but I'm grounded. He pouts, moving a piece of his own. You're not grounded, you're unlocking. Same thing. One is a punishment, the other is to keep you alive. And while I trust your class in general, I do not trust them with your life. They're responsible. And I can look after myself. Izuku, you shot a villain related to the oldest and possibly most powerful being on this planet. I absolutely do not trust you with your own life. You shoot someone one time and this is what happens. Yes. Nezu finally moves another piece. But you do still get to go to camp. I guess that's something. It's with the pussycats this year, right? Yes. They seem very eager to see you again. Izuku shudders. The last time I went, I was almost eaten alive. I remember. So, my life matters to the point I can't go off campus, but not enough to protect me from the cats? They won't defeat you. But Izuku bounces on his seat in the bus, staring out the window. Izuku, sit properly. Aizawa sighs. I haven't seen outside in weeks. Gimme a break. Oh, of course. I'm so sorry for trying to keep you alive. I call bull. You know what those cats did to me? Aizawa chuckles at the memory, nodding. Hey, yeah. You're a bastard, you know that? Yeah. Wait. Kaminari looks between them. What happened last time? I almost got eaten alive. Stop being so dramatic. Aizawa rolls his eyes. They dressed him up and called him part of the kit. When he said he was a rat pup, they tick and raspberry confrontationed him. How dare you? Izuku slumps in his seat. I can't relive that. Do you have pics? Kaminari grins. Don't you dare get the pics, I swear to Dad. Aizawa shrugs. We're here anyway. Everyone off. Izuku glares at the two cats waiting for them from where he stands at the back of the class. He can't be seen. Aizu. Pixie Bob calls out, waving him over. Kit, do it with us? Not. No way. My classmates are right here. Come on. Please. For Auntie? Denki pushes Izuku forward, smirking. Come on, Izuku. For your Auntie. Traitor. He sighs dramatically as a pair of kitten ears are set on his head. I'm going to make all of you pay for this. Mandalay twirls, grinning. Lock on with these sparkling gazes. Pixie Bob smiles, following close behind. We've come to lend a hand to help. Coming out of nowhere. They too speak in unison. Izuku steps between them, hands forming a heart while his eyes sparkle and shine. He smiles. Surprisingly cut and cat-like. He bleps and winks. All three speak together, striking a pose. Wild, wild pussycats. Izuku stands in the middle of the group, blepping still, with one hand in a flick. His smile drops in an instant. The happy. Very. Both cats and Denki speak simultaneously, nodding. And soon the whole world will be. Aizawa smirks. Izuku goes quiet, eyes honing in on the phone the adult is holding. Release that, and I'll release my 2 giga file of blackmail on you. Including the pajamas. Fine. Aizawa sighs and puts the phone away. Any gay? Kaminari wraps an arm around Izuku's shoulder. Where's the bathroom? I gotta go. Oh, this isn't a rest stop. Aizawa smirks sadistically, jumping atop the bus. Have fun. Mandalay grabs Izuku and jumps beside Aizawa. Have foo dash. Denki is cut short by Pixie Bob as she slams her hands on the ground, crumbling it to pieces below the class. Izuku shuffles awkwardly as Koda glares at him non-stop. It's making him uncomfortable. Okay, why? Why the glaring? I can't dash. Izuku is glad for his self-defense training when he manages to catch the little boy's hand before it can confrontation his privates. All right then. He stands and moves to a different seat on the bus. The sun begins to set, 1A all devouring the food prepared for them. Izuku isn't with them though, he's wandering through the forest with 2 bowls, up a hill. Hey, I brought some food. Koda scoffs from where he sits near the edge. Silent treatment? Not sure what I did to deserve that, but okay. Izuku sits beside him, beginning to eat. You know, you'd get on great with Bakugo. How did you even find me? Cousin intuition. Izuku grins. Actually, the smile drops and he glances to the starry sky. This was my spot too. When I was here, the cats kind of felt like they were my mom. She was so kind and silly and sometimes it got too much. Koda nods. Who was your mom? Midoriya Inko. She was a nurse. She? A casualty in a villain confrontation. Not when I was much older than you actually. I was there. Oh, I'm sorry. Koda looks away. Don't be. Izuku smiles at him. It happens. The part of life is death. I like to think she's a star now. Or the moon. So every night I can smile at her again. That's so cheesy but FNG adorable at the same time. He snorts, nodding. What about you? My mom and dad were heroes. Everyone kept talking about how amazing they were, but they FNG abandoned me. Was I? Kota looks to Izuku, tears in his eyes. Was I a bad son? Izuku shakes his head. You're great. They just had a bad matchup. They probably wanted to come home, back to you. Movie nights and cuddles and… Kota sniffles. Then why aren't they here? They are. He points to the sky. That's part of the Scorpio constellation. It's shining brighter tonight. Kota follows his hand, nodding. Mom and Dad are up there? Maybe. We don't know what happens after death, so it's possible. Izuku shrugs. Why don't you try making a wish? Aren't you supposed to wish on shooting stars? Shooting stars are literal space trash. Don't wish on those. You. Izuku giggles. Go on. Fine. Kota closes his eyes and makes a wish. What did you wish for? Not saying. Kota smirks. F off, your boyfriend probably misses you. Izuku goes red. I don't what? I don't have a boyfriend. Sure. Kota stares, unimpressed. Bye, rude child. Kota looks up at the sky once Izuku is gone and smiles. I wish Izuku doesn't leave me when he becomes the best hero. Fire. Bright, hot fire. It surrounds the camp, trapping them all. Izuku knows this fire. He's seen it before. He's seen it burn his mother alive, even if it was an accident. He lost her to this fire. He might lose someone else. He knows he should move. He should run and help. But he's frozen, staring at the blue as tears build in his eyes, spilling easily. Izuku! We have to go. Someone calls for him. But he can't hear. It's so bright. So painful. Izuku! A soft feminine voice chants his voice. He groans as he wakes. Only, he's not anywhere he recognizes. Clouds of green and gray surround him, white trees tower over him, and blue grass rests below him. Out from the white greenery steps a woman, with long green hair and matching eyes. Her figure is small, and she has such a calming presence. Izuku! The voice comes from her, and she wraps wings around him. My son. He hugs back. Am I dead? No. Inko rests a hand in his hair. You're in a coma, Quirk-induced. A coma? He gulps. I have to wake up. Soon, Izuku. Soon you will wake and you will face a new challenge. He tilts his head and she smiles, holding his chin with her spare hand. Izuku, you're doing so well. I'm so proud of you. Izuku feels tears drip down his cheeks as he nods. Nezu loves you. Inko's smile drops. Honey, for what I said all those years ago, I am sorry. Truly. I forgive you. I forgave you a long time ago. Inko smiles again. ABD chuckles wetly, gathering tears of her own. I have to go now and you have to wake. But, ask out that Denki boy when you can, he seems a good fit for you. And though Izuku does blush, he is not embarrassed. I will. I love you. Now and forever. One last kiss to his forehead and she's gone. The world around him crumbles. Nezu finally arrives at the hospital, panic clear in his twitching eyes and bared teeth. He rounds in on the nearest officer. Where is he? Where is my son? The officer gulps. Principal Nezu, Izuku was taken by the League. We don't know where he is yet. Nezu stares at the ground. Izuku, please be okay. The world around him crumbles, but Izuku does not fear what's to come, not while he knows his mother is watching. The first thing he notices are the restraints, tying him to a not-so-comfortable chair. Then he feels the gag and blindfold. Nodding mentally to himself, he listens for people. He can hear 4, one talking, another 2 walking, the last cleaning a glass. Ears atop his head twitch as he focuses for more. A door opens, then slams shut. An exit? Or an entrance? Villain or friend? He doesn't know. Next, he needs to panic. They'll move the sensory restraints and talk. A talking villain is the easiest kind to defeat. So, he slowly begins to struggle, picking up speed as time passes. He's awake. A voice sighs. Get the blindfold off then. Shigaraki. Finally, Izuku can see where he is. An abandoned dead bar. The mist is the one cleaning the glasses. There are 3 other people besides Shigaraki. Homicidal Toga Himiko, runaway, blood Quirk, unknown specifications. Unknown, Quirk is likely metal-based as they have a giant magnet. Dabi, self-proclaimed vigilante, fire-based Quirk, also a runaway, and defeater of his moth. As much as Izuku wants to punch the loss, he has a part to play. Where am I? You, secret boss, are in the League of Villains base. Hanking smirks. Not so high and mighty without a safety device, huh? He looks away, chewing his lip. The League's base? It's not as big as he'd thought it to be. Why am I here? I shot your people? NPCs. I never cared about them. You, on the other hand? Shigaraki chuckles. Absent father, abused by your peers, your mother died. Perfect villain backstory, wouldn't you think? Izuku stares, then smiles. That's what this is about. What? You see a bit of yourself in me, don't you? Abandoned by the world, taken in by a powerful man, trained to be the best. Of course, you were younger than I was, and you were taken in by a villain. But Quirk-induced parent death? Gaming references? Weird powerful father figure? That's so sweet. Toga grins. It is, isn't it? Izuku laughs to himself. And to answer your question, I would like to be a villain sometimes. When THPSC yells at my dad, or when someone calls me Deku. But I'm spiting them by being a hero. Shigaraki scoffs. Kill them and they can't call you Deku? Shigaraki, or should I call you Shimura? Life ends with death. Living ends when your reputation and social life are disabled and you can't step anywhere without getting a dirty look. I've ended enough to know. Sounds villainous to me. Oh, it is. Izuku nods, shrugging off the rope he'd untied during the conversation. But those who follow the past in pursuit of happiness will never know the joy of the future. The hell does that mean? It means I'm over it. I think for my future, I'll make a quirkless middle school with hero clubs. Or maybe I'll just get rid of all villains. Need for heroes if villains don't exist. He's got a good point. Dabi shrugs. If you'll excuse me, I have to get home. You're not leaving. Izuku's hair moves as his rat ears twitch. He smirks. Aren't I? There's a knock. Pizza delivery. The wall breakdowns apart with a loud boom. Young Izuku, I am here to save you. Izuku sighs. I can see that all might. Shigaraki snorts, even if he is now entangled in Kamui Wood's branches. It turns to choking as he hacks up black goo, shortly followed by Izuku and the League. They seem to pop away, leaving goop in their place. Izuku gags, doubling over as he gets it all out. Ooh, I'm gonna need a week's worth of tea after this. Sensei, you shouldn't be here. Do not worry. The villain is cut short by Izuku's laughter. Why is he laughing? Oh, you're all idiots. All for one falls to the ground. What is happening? Izuku keeps laughing, taking a safety device from seemingly nowhere. Thank you, invisible girl. Sure thing, Izuku. Free pets, right? Yes, but later. Okie dokie. The League stumble to find the source of the voice, but she is long gone. Gunshot rings out. All for one grunts in pain. What is happening? Quirk a racing bullet. He shrugs. We should really look into that, Dad. Yes, we should. The rat steps out from the shadows. How did you dash? Know you were going to take me? Know where you were? The League nod. Let me paint you a picture. Once home from the stain attack, Izuku locks the doors and closes the blinds before finally sitting at the table. Dad, I think there's a traitor in you. Nezu looks up from his TW. What makes you say that? Think about it. They didn't know about me till after the USJ confrontation, after the break-in. And I wasn't in the sports festival. Not to mention you rarely leave grounds. So they couldn't have gotten your picture any other way. Izuku sighs. And if they went to the problem of getting my picture, then they probably want to defeat and or kidnap me. They can try. He snorts. You're too protective. Nezu shrugs. Your opinion. Any gay. They wouldn't risk taking me on grounds, right? No. We have much better security after the break-in. When am I next going off campus? Summer camp? That must be their target? Nezu nods. It has to be someone in the first year too, as everyone else already knew of your existence and genius before. That narrows it down quite a bit actually. He smiles. Stain? Aizawa looks at him sympathetically, and Izuku nods, checking his peripheral vision for anything. Uraraka, Kaminari, Ida, and Jairu all shift. He takes note. We're all going shopping tomorrow, wanna come? Uraraka smiles. I would, but I'm not allowed off school grounds. Oh. She walks off. Izuku takes out his phone. Check Uraraka's background and forms please. Nezu drops documents on Izuku's desk, beside his laptop. I knew it. I'll take her out. Dad, no. He glares. Not yet at least. If she's working for the league and they're planning on taking me, it may be our best chance to get all for one gone. For good. Am I sensing a plan? Nezu smirks. And Izuku smirks right back. Yes. All right, Izuku sets down the last paper in front of All Might. This is the main plan, there are backups. Why should I take orders from a kid? Enduhor scoffs, and a few other heroes nod in agreement. This kid is Nezu's son, possibly smarter than him, and is the victim of this plan. That shuts them up. I will be taken by the league, assume they don't defeat me, during this year's first-year heroic summer camp. Camp itself won't change. Once I am taken, Vlad King, capture Uraraka. Do not let her get away. Roger. My name is Izuku. The next night, Eraserhead will be at wherever the Nomu are being held. Get Yaoyorozu to put a tracker on a Nomu that confrontations. Why there? 'Cause we're going to make a scene. And if we're lucky, the league will only have 2 bases. Dad will track me to the league's main base. All Might will burst in with the other heroes after Endeavor and the others deal with the Nomu. With any luck, All for One will show himself. How will we get him? He's been around 200 years. With this, he holds out a bullet. Courtesy of the Night Eye Agency. Aizawa will deactivate All for One's quirk, Haikure will sneak me a safety device, and I'll shoot him, permanently erasing his quirk. Nezu nods. As his stolen immortality quirk will be gone, he'll die slowly enough for us to explain our genius. Everyone in the room nods. Backup plan is, I die and never tell my crush anything. He sighs. Does everyone understand? He glares, green eyes glowing toxic threat. Yes, sir. And here we are. Izuku smiles, walking to his more-armed dad. All for One, do you know who I am? No answer. I'm the blur between hero and villain, good and evil, but most importantly, I am my father's son. He smirks, teeth just that bit sharper than a human's. You never stood a chance. All for One closes his eyes, chuckling weakly. I really didn't. Sensei. Goodbye, Shigaraki. Izuku walks up to Denki outside Udare and takes his hand. Kaminari Denki, I really feel a spark between us. Do you want to go on vacation with me? The blonde stops. Izuku, are you asking me to be your boyfriend? Yes. When since how Izuku cuts him off with a peck to the cheek. Your jokes are cheesy. Denki flushes, letting off little sparks. Why? I'll be your boyfriend. The end. Or is it? Izuku is happy. Denki and he had finally gotten together, and they'd spend a whole day on vacation with his dad. The second day, things go south. Izuku feels weird. He lay in bed, coughing, burning alive. Still, he tries to get up, wobbling on shaky legs to get dressed. He falls halfway with a loud crash. He groans as he wakes, bleary eyes trying to take in his surroundings. White curtains and walls. A hospital? Izuku, are you awake? The soft voice of his dad comes from beside him, and he nods. Yeah, what happened? Izuku. He can hear Nezu gulp. I think you developed a quirk. What? What do you mean you've developed a quirk? Izuku glares, trying to control his breath. Well, Nezu waves his hand about, trying to find the words. You passed out, so I did a blood test as I always do when you pass out. And? There were a few irregularities? What does that mean? Fists clench around thin bed sheets. It means I found Quirk in your DNA? And it wasn't just the ears? The teeth? He gestures to them, a sense of fear beginning to settle. No, those are characteristics caused by Quirk use, something that altered your biological form without leaving Quirk in your DNA. I compared it with Kaminari's, and a few others. It's like you've always had a Quirk. Izuku stares, shaking. That's not possible. Only one for all and all for one can dash. Nezu takes his hands. That's another thing, I compared it with all for one's blood, and it's a perfect match. I think you may have gotten his Quirk. If Izuku could shortcircuit, he would. His mouth opens and shuts, trying to find something, anything, to say, but his brain is too fast for his words to form. Izuku, please stay calm. We're going to figure this out. Figure what out? I have all for one's Quirk. Yeah, you do. Nice to meet you. Izuku screams at the sudden voice in his head. What the hell dash. Chill. The voice sighs. You're not as good a vessel I thought you'd be. Was that whole epic speech a lie? Izuku runs a hand through his hair. There is a voice in my head calling me a vessel. Nezu narrows his eyes. That's odd. I'm not a voice, I'm all for one, or AF for short. AF? Not AFO? No. That sounds weird. You're not wrong. Nezu pokes his side gently. Who are you talking to? Apparently, Izuku sighs. All for one. Or AF. Nezu taps his chin. Either this is a hallucination from built-up stress caused by your everyday life, or all for one is sentient and decided you'd be an appropriate human for its next vessel. Ding. 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 AF cheers. I'm sentient. Your dad's smart. Maybe I should have chosen him. Izuku rubs his forehead. Do not transfer to dad. He's a rat. So are you. I was born human. And I don't have a thing against the human race. You know what? That's so valid. I won't transfer to him. Thank you. He sighs. Where's Denki? Is he okay? Yes, he's okay. He's at the hotel waiting for us. Nezu smiles reassuringly. How am I going to tell him? Hey, Denki. I impressed a sentient Quirk with a 30-second speech. And now I have said Quirk. Oh, and that Quirk belonged to the worst villain that lived 200 years and even All Might couldn't take down. Oh well, let's kiss. He rolls his eyes. That'll go great. Do it? No. Come on. Just do it. I'm not going to dash. That is so cool. Kaminari grins, slinging an arm around him. I knew you were awesome, but getting the world's most powerful Quirk? Oof. He chuckles. You're not upset? Why would I be? You're still Izuku. And you don't have to use the Quirk, you can probably ignore it. But AF snickers. No, but seriously, just use me once a month and I'll leave you alone. I like to be useful. And having friends is chill when I'm all alone in your brain. Izuku smiles and nods. I'm still me. And you is missing out on dumber than thou cuddles. Denki opens his arms and Izuku buries himself in his chest. You're not dumb. Agree to disagree. I disagree. They both giggle and laugh, happy in each other's presence. Why did it have to be school again so soon? He didn't even get to enjoy half his break, spending most of it trying to gain better control of the Quirk thrust upon him. At least he couldn't hear AF anymore. And school shouldn't really change, hopefully. He should still have his family, boyfriend, and education. Isn't something missing? Friends. Izuku stands in the middle of English class, grinning to himself. Friends? Yamada raises an eyebrow in question. Sorry. Forgot I was here. He chuckles nervously, slinking back into his seat. So he's missing friends. How do you make friends? He feels like a creep, watching his classmates' interactions behind their backs. But how else will he learn? And it's definitely worth it to see his boyfriend from behind. Countless nights are spent researching. Until he's ready. Or at least he thinks he is. Nerves rattle through him as he makes his way up to Ida. He shoots a hand out in front of the other. I'm Izuku, let's eat together to form platonic relations. What? Ida stares, brows furrowed. Let me start over. Izuku takes a deep breath. Hello, I'm Izuku. I would like to be your friend. That sounds like a question. Both parties have to accept the friendship, or it's one-sided and annoying. Ida nods. I suppose so. You can hang out with me for lunch. I usually sit with Todoroki and Yaoyorozu. Rich trio. Izuku slams a hand over his mouth. Sorry. Ida chuckles. You're not wrong. Yaoyorozu, Todoroki, Izuku will be joining us. I hope that's okay. The robot sits down. Of course. Yaoyorozu smiles to Izuku as he sits. We weren't doing much. Uraraka usually leads the conversation. He cringes at her mention. Sorry. It's okay. She was part of the league, so... She was still your friend. They all nod. Let's move on. Ida cuts in. How was your vacation? Yaoyorozu leans forward, resting her head on her hand. Yeah. How was your vacation with Kaminari, your boyfriend? He goes red. It was fine. Just fine. She smirks. You didn't do anything? No. We've only been together a week. And I got sick anyway. He looks away, feeling the blush grow. Did he look after you? Maybe. Izuku is truly a tomato now, covering his face with his hands. How? We just shared a bed. He's warm. Yaoyorozu snickers. There's the gossip. Oh, the girls are gonna love this. Izuku's jaw drops. Don't worry, we've all been subject at least once. Ida sighs. But you never learn. Momo grins, returning to her food. So, how was your time off? Izuku pokes at his food. Training. Meetings. Family gatherings. Those sound boring. They are. Momo sighs. Such is the life of the rich. Izuku snorts, grinding with his two sharp teeth. I thought the rich had more freedom. Whoa. Todoroki stares. What? Your teeth? Oh yeah. Izuku hums in thought. That quirk I was hit with gave me them, as well as the ears and night vision. Apparently, the night vision makes my eyes glow. And I can make them do that weird toxic thing. Within seconds, Todoroki is searching his hair with gentle pets, searching for the ears. Heikyur got to touch them. She helped my case. Izuku squeaks out, squirming to get away. I'll pay you. I don't dash. He melts as the boy finds them, slumping in the seat and making quiet noises of contentness. I don't need money. They are as soft as Heikyur described them. Todoroki smiles ever so slightly. Very comforting. No fair. I wanna go. Momo reaches across the table. And that's how they all spend their lunch, taking turns petting an embarrassed but happy Izuku. He made friends. The door opens to an ominously luminate room, with a single table and two chairs either side of it. The chair at the head of the table slowly turns, and a lamp flicks on. Izuku sits with Nezu in his lap, petting the rat. They speak in unison. Sir Knight, to what do we owe the pleasure? The hero flicks on the ceiling light. I called 3 days ago saying I'd visit. You know what this is about? Both rats pout. We worked hard on that. Izuku huffs. I'm sure you did, but this case is extremely important. There may be a child involved. The atmosphere shifts, more sinister, both their eyes letting off sharp glows. A laptop is placed on the table and Nezu hops down, heading toward the secret hero room. Information. Now, Night Eye looks between them. A Yakuza group makes the bullets you asked for. We have reason to believe they're using a child to make them because her quirk is suited to it. Gender? Appearance? Izuku taps away at the keyboard. Female. She has white hair. Nezu sits again on the table this time and sets down his own laptop. I've got the Yakuza family tree information here and all details on your case. Do you want them? Izuku shakes his head. Briefs are on the tree while I work around the firewalls. He nods. As you know, we have this tree dating back to the pre-Quirk era. We shall go through dash. The door opens and in comes Kaminari. He takes one look around before ducking his head out the room and yelling, Code R. What's Code R? Kaminari sits on the table, setting down 2 apples. Code research. When they get like this, no one can stop them till they have at least 3 plans. So I've made a system. We get coffee for them and make sure they eat. And I can cuddle Izuku when he gets cold. I do not get cold easily. Izuku picks up the apple, biting part off. Before setting it back down. Okay, he chews and gulps. I'm in. What information is there? Nezu looks up from his own device. Going through emails. He hums slightly. Here we go. One on a kid being transferred to a new space. It's in code, but a weak one, so I should be able to get the address. Any names? 3. Chrono, Chisakai, and Eri. Judging by the names, Eri's the one we're after. Eri's 5 years old. Izuku's eyes dart about as he reads more. Is Chisakai a germaphobe? They're all wearing masks. Germs are gross. One time I got this really bad cut, and they had to use a special electrical tape kinda bandage on it cause sparks were going everywhere. Babe, you're a genius? Izuku grins, typing restarting. I know. Kaminari smiles. How though? If he's using Eri to make these bullets, and quirks are seen in the blood as well as the obvious sanitization that base has to go through, he's probably using her blood. Nezu shudders slightly. I'm looking into needle and cleaning supplies shipments around the area, they said. More evidence for the case. Izuku glares at the screen. All this for quirks to disappear? He's using a child to erase people's quirks? Kaminari shudders, wrapping his arms around Izuku. That's a villain if I ever heard one. Agreed. Is everything ready? Izuku's narrowed eyes cut through the officer's question. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't. Good point. On my cue, commence the operation. The rat boy rolls his eyes, marching off in a different direction than the standard officers who walk to the front door of the Yakuza residence. We have a warrant to search here. He sighs at the sound of fighting minutes later, ears twitching from it all. Dad, was I right? He asks into the comms system, continuing his stroll. It's hard to say. What? Well, from the inside, someone has turned it into a fun horse. It's separating the team. I am unable to determine if you were correct. Damn. He steps out the road, into an alley. Is everyone okay? Yes. I'm glad we had Miss Hatsum build these, otherwise there would have been serious issues. Me too. We should hire her. Agreed. He chuckles to himself, drawing a weapon from the belt on his costume. It's a suit, much like his dad's, with red accents. Hurry up. Please dash. Stop right there. Izuku steps forward, holding the safety device to the villain's head. Hello, Kai. The man glares. You won't shoot me. Not with her here. Izuku cocks the safety device, smiling. We've both seen plenty death. At least this one will benefit us both. Some hero you are. Don't you understand I'm doing the world a favor? Righting the world of quirks. He sighs. I'll admit, as a quirkless person, I've thought about it. So you understand? Oh. What I understand is that the world wouldn't get any better. Sexism, racism, homophobia. At least now it can be dismissed with a powerful quirk and a few threats to use it against the aggressors. But before? People died every day. People still die every day. And when the world is filled with quirks, we'll find more ways to hate each other. It's just how humanity is. Then what do you fight for? He hums, shrugging. My family, my boyfriend, my friends. Even if the world can't change, there's no harm in trying. Quirks are a disease. At least yours doesn't speak to you. I thought you were quirkless? I was. Then I defeated all for one. He removes the safety device from where it had rested, tucking it away. AF transferred to me. And since I have to use it once a month, I thought I'd just let you run off on your speech while I take your quirk. How does it feel to be pure and clean, Chisakai? The villain's body tenses as he removes a glove, sends the hand to a wall, and focuses. How dash. I told you, sharp teeth shine in the glow of his smirking eyes. You're quirkless? The man fumbles for a weapon, anything to fight with, but there's nothing. Izuku scoops the girl up at the sound of sirens. Hiya, Eri. His whole demeanor shift, calmer, comforting. I'm Izuku, I work with Nezu. Do you know him? She nods. The stronger people are gonna take Overhaul to prison now, okay? He won't be able to harm you. She nods again, lips twisting upward in a slight smile. Izuku lowers his head, shifting the hair with a hand. Ro show the fuzzy ears. You can touch them if you'd like. They're really soft. She hesitates, only for officers to arrive. Terrified eyes turn to awe as she accidentally brushes a finger against them. Soft. Izuku lay on the bed, curled around a sleeping, white-haired girl. The door opens and shuts. Little pup? Are you awake? Yeah. But Aries asleep, so be quiet. Izuku turns his head to face Nezu, unwilling to move his body with how the girl is clinging to it. How is the girl? The rat sits on the bed, petting his son's hair. Traumatized, tired, deeply concerned, more words beginning with T. He sighs. At least the bastard put her back together properly every time. Will the pup have scars too? Izuku chuckles as he nods. Already claiming her, huh? You know how I am with scarred and traumatized children. Nezu grins, just too sharp. That I do. Izuku smiles back, eerily similar. Eri rubs her eyes as she wakes, tongue out slightly in a small blep. Good morning. Izuku hums, brushing her hair back. How did you sleep? Better with Izuku? He smiles, sitting himself up before helping her do the same. Did you sleep good too? Yeah. You're a great cuddle partner. Eri is good? But Eri's quirk harms people. She sniffles. Did you really take his quirk away? Can you take mine too? Izuku's head shoots back in shock. You don't like your quirk? No. But what does it do? The doctor said it reverses the organic matter? Makes things how they were before, or before they even were. So that's how they did it. He sighs, shaking his head. Eri, you don't have a bad quirk. It's amazing. You could help people with it, but you don't have to use it at all if you don't wanna. Either way, I won't take it, I'm sorry. Eri nods, hiding her head in Izuku's chest, accidentally stabbing him with her blunt horns. How is it good? How do I help people? Well, you could heal. He shifts so they no longer dig into him. If you reverse it to before they got harm. Eri moves back, brows furrowed as she pulls up his shirt. Your scar, when did you get it? Around when I was 11, 5 years ago, in a fire. Why? She nods and closes her eyes, biting her lip hard enough to bruise as her hands press against the old wound. After a minute, she removes them, opening her eyes to stare. I did it, Izuku, I did it. He looks down at where the scar should be, only to find clear, even flesh. Eri, did you heal my scar? Sorry, was I not supposed to? No, you did amazing, it's a bit surprising. You have really good control for someone your age. I had to use it lots. Do you like it? Yes, thank you, Eri. She yawns and clings. Good. Love you, Izuchan. He breath evens out, signaling her drift into dreamland. Love you too, Lucis. The door swings open, letting fresh air in the house, along with the rats and their newest pup. It's not very big, so you shouldn't get worried about being lost. Izuku smiles at the girl clinging to his hand. She nods, shuffling closer as Izuku leads her around the house, while Nezu prepares dinner. And this is your room. He opens the door to a plain room, much like his own when he first arrived. We'll go shopping this weekend so you can get stuff. To decorate? I get to decorate? She smiles, eyes shining with joy. Izuku nods, lifting her onto her new bed. You can do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't defeat people. Does that include snuggles? She fiddles with her hands, glancing at her lap. Yeah, you're allowed to snuggle. But if someone asks you to stop, you gotta stop, okay? Okay. I don't want to make people feel bad. I know. The doorbell rings, and some shuffling and speaking is heard moments later. That'll be Denki. Do you want to meet him? Who's Denki-kun? He's my boyfriend. I like him romantically. He's also really kind and funny. Eri purses her lips as she thinks, squirming in place. If Izuchan likes him, then I trust him too. She looks up, determination showing clearly. Let's go then. Am I good to carry you? She nods, reaching up with grabby hands. Izuku obliges her request, hoisting her up on his hip and walking down the stairs. Babe. Kaminari jumps in for a hug. And this must be little Eri. He turns his attention to the little girl, smiling. Kaminari Denki, nice to meet you. Eri glances up at Izuku, who nods, before shaking the electric user's hand. I brought some of my old toys. And clothes, though they might be a bit big. Toys? Eri tilts her head. They're things you play with, to have fun. Izuku clarifies, walking to the living room behind his partner. Wanna try? She nods frantically, rocking Izuku's hold with how aggressive it is. Izuku sets her down on the couch, pulling up an appropriate show while Denki shows her how to play with his old dolls and cars. Your parents let you have dolls? Izuku flops down beside Eri. Older sister, remember? Oh yeah. Everyone. Izuku holds Eri's hand again, though now they stand at the front of the 1A classroom. This is Eri, my little sister. She's 5, and very shy. So please warn us if you want to talk to her. Eri waves, gulping. The class awes. My dark will never go, but she has made it easier to see. What a fantastic glow. Anyway, Izuku clears his throat. She'll be joining my classes until Dad, she, and I decide on a proper school or schedule for her. Eri's eyes widen, her hands gripping Izuku's pant legs. Won't leave Izuchan. Never. The class awes again, a few tearing up. A hand ruffles her hair, getting her to look up. I won't leave you, Eri. I promise. She nods. Oh? Let's sit down, yeah? She nods again, following behind Izuku to their new seats. Izawa stands. Now, today's lesson is? Now Eri has 2 things she never thought she would. A loving father and a protective brother, who both love her for who she is, not what she can do for them. Izuku has things he didn't think we would too. Like Nezu being his not-so-secret dad, and saving a girl and getting a quirk. He doesn't regret a thing. One night, looking back to the past, he smiles at the memory of his mother, now resting peacefully above him. Thank you. The end. Nezu watches the timid, green-haired boy who was sitting settled in.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.